Chapter 25-20. They had some understanding of Yu Siqing's attainments in the art of medicine and poison. However, in their opinion, their master's medical skills were still superior. After all, Yu Siqing took such a long time to detoxify their master's poison, causing the entire Yu clan to suffer heavy losses. Thinking about it, until now, the Yu clan still hadn't recovered from that loss. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and shook her head. The poison this time is harder to detoxify than the previous one. I'm not sure if Yu Siqing can detoxify it. Ever since the previous incident, Yu Siqing must have been working hard to make greater progress in the art of medicine and poison these days. Regardless of whether she can detoxify it or not, this poison has a time limit. After 3 months, it will automatically detoxify. We just need to keep them busy for a while. Lan Qingyan wanted her to make a fool of herself in front of the Lan clan. Now, it seemed that this wasn't an easy task. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the three beasts finally understood. Their master wanted to see the world plunged into chaos. Preparing such a strange poison for Lan Qingyan first made the entire Lan clan shocked, then made the entire Yu clan busy. Their master deliberately didn't let them be idle. Thinking about it, the Lan clan was also surging like a storm. The young lord was poisoned, and the situation was so serious. The disturbance wasn't small. Once Lan Qingyan died, the Lan clan situation would be even more mysterious. Just these 3 months' time was enough to make the Lan clan stir up quite a lot of commotion. Originally, as the successor of the Rainbow Pearl, Lan Qingyan's position in the Lan clan was unshakable. However, there are definitely many outstanding juniors in the Lan clan. No one would be willing to be under others, not to mention that Lan Qingyan herself wasn't a virtuous young lord. As long as Lan Qingyan's situation wasn't stabilized, the changes in the Lan clan would be irreversible. I think that Yu Siqing will find it difficult to resolve this problem in a short period of time. That would be very interesting. Xiao Bai's eyes flickered with interest. She was really curious about this good show. I've already sent people to monitor the movements of the Lan clan and Yu clan. I believe there will be news in a few days. Bailey Hongzhuang was full of smiles. In the past, they had been passive for so many years. Now, it was time to create some trouble for Lan Qingyan and the others. Thinking about it, they who were in the dark and didn't know that revenge was approaching should be enjoying this process. Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan accompanied Lan Qingyan all the way to the Yu clan. Ever since Lan Qingyan fell into a state of severe pain, her condition had not improved at all. Lan Qingyan could not even speak after such an action. She had fallen into a coma. Not only that, the wounds on Lan Qingyan's body were constantly bleeding. No matter what method was used, it could not be stopped. Therefore, Yu Manlan could only continuously feed Lan Qingyan blood-forming pills. Otherwise, if this continued, Lan Qingyan would have already died from excessive blood loss. In fact, Yu Manlan was also a little dissatisfied. If Lan Jingquang and the rest could have healed Lan Qingyan's arm earlier, then the current situation wouldn't be so bad. In Chapter 25-21. Jingquang, that Bailey Hongzhuang is too hateful. Her methods are so despicable. Qingyan's current state is all because of that Bailey Hongzhuang. You have to avenge Qingyan. Yu Manlan's eyes were filled with hatred. That damned Bailey Hongzhuang dared to hurt her daughter. She couldn't let her off so easily. Hearing this, Lan Jingquang's eyes were malicious and ruthless. The battle between opponents is cruel. Qingyan didn't win against her this time, so she ended up like this. If Qingyan was strong enough, the one who would end up like this would be Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing this, Yu Manlan's expression couldn't help but change a little. Qingyan has already ended up like this. Instead of helping Qingyan vent her anger, you say such words? Yu Manlan couldn't help but be angry. Her chest heaved violently. She felt that Lan Jingquang was becoming more and more inhumane. No matter what, Lan Qingyan was still his daughter. Now that he saw his daughter suffering so much, shouldn't Lan Jingquang's heart ache and think of ways to avenge his daughter? Lan Jingquang glanced at Yu Manlan indifferently. It's because of you that Qingyan has developed such a character. The Battle of Zhuelu is a battle for the younger generation. You and I can't participate. What's the use? Are we going to charge into Limitless Palace now? Do you know how strong Limitless Palace is? Once the two sides clash, no one will have an advantage. Even if we win, the Lan family will suffer heavy losses. All of our opponents will take advantage of our weakness to take a share of the loot. Is this good for Qingyan? What a woman! Lan Jingquang couldn't hide the disgust in his eyes. He chose Yumanlan because she was a young miss from an aristocratic family. Her background was solid, and her judgment wasn't bad. But now, it seemed that Yumanlan was extremely stupid. She couldn't even understand such a simple problem. Every time something happened, other than being angry and anxious, Yumanlan couldn't give any meaningful suggestions. She was extremely stupid. It was because of this that he didn't want to interact with Yumanlan. He already had enough questions to think about. If he still had to answer her questions, wouldn't it be a waste of time? Following Lan Jingquang's words, Yumanlan was also stunned. She stood rooted to the ground and opened her mouth, but no words came out. Indeed, she had never thought about these problems. She only felt that Qingyan was being tortured so miserably, so she must give the other party a ruthless lesson. This was the only way for them to vent their anger. However, after hearing Lan Jingquang's explanation, she realized that she had underestimated the situation. Are we just going to do nothing and let Bailey Hongzhuang continue to be arrogant? When Yumanlan thought of this, she also felt that it was unbearable. If this was the case, then wouldn't Qingyan have suffered so much for nothing? Lan Jingquang looked at Yumanlan's helpless expression, and the disgust in his heart grew even stronger. This woman had been with her for so long, but she still didn't know how to look at the whole thing from the perspective of the family. Not to mention that Bailey Hongzhuang poisoned Lan Qingyan. They didn't have any evidence. On the contrary, the other party might even splash dirty water on them. Even if they did produce evidence, the other party was in opposition to them. They wouldn't care at all. Chapter 25-22. If the Lan family really used this reason to reason with Wuji Palace, they would become a joke in everyone's eyes. Qingyan should solve the trouble she caused herself. If you had listened to me all these years, Qingyan would have become like this again. Before you have enough confidence, don't rashly alarm the opponent. Once you make a move, you must kill the opponent. Don't try to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. Not only is there no effect, but it's also a joke. Lan Jingquang's expression was gloomy. If Lan Qingyan's personality was similar to his, she would have long been the head of the Lan family. Why would they need to pay attention to that old man Lan Hongtai? Since that old man's head was filled with thoughts of the dead Lan Yunxiao, then let him continue. They didn't need to pay attention to him at all. Back then, how much did he hate Lan Yunxiao? That was why he plotted all of this. In fact, he succeeded. Before he made his move, Lan Yunxiao and the rest didn't notice anything. It was because of this that Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were caught unprepared. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's attitude and behavior were all within his expectations. Even if he was labeled as despicable and shameless, so what? In this game, he was the winner. Lan Yunxiao was only a prisoner. He had let Lan Yunxiao live in glory for more than 20 years, but it was only 20 years. After that, everything had nothing to do with Lan Yunxiao anymore. Now, in the Lan family, who dared to mention this matter? Except for that old man Lan Hongtai. However, he had long since stopped caring about that old man. This was enough. Hearing Lan Jingquang's words, Yumanlan was speechless. Lan Jingquang's gaze was malicious and terrifying. Seeing him like this, Yumanlan couldn't help but recall the Lan Jingquang from 19 years ago. At that time, when she learned of Lan Jingquang's thoughts, she was also shocked. However, she didn't like Mu Lingbing and chose to agree. At that time, Lan Jingquang acted like he was Lan Yunxiao's good brother in the entire Lan family. No one suspected him. What happened after that overturned everyone's understanding of Lan Jingquang. In fact, she also felt that Lan Jingquang was very terrifying. Lan Qingyan woke up in a daze and heard Lan Jingquang's words. Her heart was filled with regret. It was because she had underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang that she had ended up in this situation. If she hadn't, the situation would have been completely different. Unfortunately, at this point, she had no other choice. She only hoped that her great-aunt could remove the poison in her body as soon as possible. 3 months later, she would have a chance to compete with Bailey Hongzhuang again. When that happens, I will definitely succeed in one fell swoop and strangle that damned Bailey Hongzhuang to death. She, Lan Qingyin, would not allow any stain in her life. She would personally use her own blood to wipe away this stain. At this moment, Lan Qingyin finally understood what Lan Jingquang had taught her all these years. Lan Jingquang was right. After running around for a while, Lan Qingyin's group finally arrived at Yutian City. However, compared to the welcome Lan Qingyin and the others had received when they first arrived, the attitude of the Yu clan's people when they saw them this time was clearly a lot colder. Chapter 25-23. This situation was within Yu Manlin's expectations. When they left, they were too disloyal. It wasn't strange for them to receive such cold treatment. However, she didn't dare to continue staying here. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth it if she was implicated and died. Lan Jingquang naturally knew where the problem lay. He felt an inexplicable sense of irritation. Yu Manlon hadn't done a single thing right during this period of time. She came to the Yu clan to play when she was full and had nothing to do. In the end, she left first after such a storm. The Yu clan was a huge support behind them. Now, a crack had appeared because of Yu Manlin's stupid actions. If they wanted to make up for it, they would have to pay a huge price. Lan Jingquang knew Yu Siqing's personality better than Yu Manlon. Yu Siqing had wanted to deal with Lan Yunxiao's family. However, because of his eagerness, he had paid a huge price. All these years, he had often given many treasures to Yu Siqing. If possible, he didn't want to interact with this woman. This woman was cold-blooded. She had no feelings, didn't care about family, and didn't care about morality. As long as she offended Yu Siqing, she could do anything. Therefore, even Lan Jingquang had to be careful when facing Yu Siqing. Once Yu Siqing was angered, even he couldn't bear the consequences. The Yu clan head was obviously disappointed in his daughter Yu Manlon. A married daughter was like water that had been poured out. She had left at such a crucial moment. Therefore, the Yu clan head was unwilling to pay attention to her. In this regard, Yu Manlon could only awkwardly please everyone. This was related to her daughter's life. "Father, is Anne at her place now?" Yu Manlin's face was full of smiles as she probed Yu Taotian. Yu Taotian glanced at Yu Manlon indifferently. His eyes were filled with indifference. "Her place has been destroyed. It's not like you don't know. She has moved to a new place." Hearing the mockery in Yu Taotian's words, Yu Manlon felt even more awkward. However, she could only pretend that she didn't hear it. "May I know where Anne is living now? Qingyin has been poisoned and is on the verge of death. Only Aunt can save her." Yu Taotian's expression changed when he heard this. He didn't expect Lan Qingyin to be in such a situation. Siqing has been in seclusion recently to research the art of medicine and poison. She's staying in another courtyard. You guys should go take a look. Even though he was very concerned about Lan Qingyin's situation, the displeasure on Yu Taotian's face did not dissipate. Lan Jingquang's face was full of smiles. He walked up and said, "Father-in-law, this is the jade coral I got a few days ago. I've been wanting to give it to you for a long time. I hope you like it." Yu Taotian looked at the jade coral in front of him, and his expression turned slightly better. He had always liked jade, and this jade coral's design and craftsmanship were very outstanding. He fell in love with it at first glance. In comparison, he liked Lan Jingquang more than he liked Yu Manlon. "Since you're already here, there's no need to bring gifts." Chapter 25-24. Father-in-law, apart from this, I also brought many gifts for mother-in-law and siblings. However, Qingyin's injuries are very serious, so we have to go and find Aunt first. I hope father-in-law will forgive us. Lan Jingquang's face was brimming with a humble and courteous smile, and his words were flawless. Yu Taotian looked at Lan Jingquang with satisfaction and nodded. "Qingyin's injuries are the most important. Go quickly." Yu Manlon heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Yu Taoyin's attitude soften a little. Speaking of which, Lan Jingquang was the one who dealt with these matters in an orderly manner. He was able to solve these problems extremely well every time. Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlon left together. On the way, Lan Jingquang was unwilling to say anything to Yu Manlon. If not for Yu Manlon's low EQ, how could the relationship be so rigid the last time she came to the Yu clan? Every time Yu Manlon and Lan Qingyan caused trouble, he had to help clean it up. Lan Qingyan was fine, but Yu Manlon couldn't even handle this kind of matter. It was really disappointing. Whenever Yu Manlon caused such trouble, it would usually require a huge price to solve it. Thinking about it, he had given a lot of things to the Yu clan over the years. Yu Manlon naturally knew that she had caused trouble for Lan Jingquang again and didn't dare to say anything. She wasn't as good at dealing with people as Lan Jingquang. In the past, she was the young miss of the Yu clan. Her life had been smooth sailing since she was young. After marrying into the Lan clan, she didn't need to worry about these things. Very quickly, Lan Jingquang and the rest brought Lan Qingyan to Yu Siqing's new residence. Aunt was very angry about the previous matter. It won't be easy to calm her down and save Qingyan. Yu Manlon looked at Lan Jingquang with difficulty. Yu Siqing had always been cold and heartless. Only the matters of the Yu clan could move her. The main reason was that Yu Siqing wanted to live here. It would save her a lot of trouble. Although Lan Qingyan was Yu Manlon's daughter, she was still an outsider to Yu Siqing. I know. If it wasn't for your stupidity, I wouldn't have so many things to deal with. Lan Jingquang looked at Yu Manlon coldly and said, "Watch your words later. No matter what she asks, just agree to it." Yu Manlon nodded. This matter concerned Lan Qingyan's life. There couldn't be any more problems. Lan Jingquang's eyes were gloomy. He had dealt with Yu Siqing for many years and knew her very well. Before coming to the Yu clan, he was already prepared to pay the price. What happened next was just as Lan Jingquang had expected. Yu Siqing's attitude after seeing Yu Manlon was even colder than Yu Taoyin's. It was as if she didn't want anyone to disturb her. Yu Manlon hurriedly told her about Lan Qingyan's poisoning. Only then did Yu Siqing close the door. "Tu is to you, so what?" Yu Manlon was dumbfounded. It seemed that Yu Siqing really didn't care about their friendship at all. Chapter 25. Even though they were dissatisfied, Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlon could do nothing about it. After all, the most important thing now was to save Lan Qingyan's life. Compared to some treasures, Lan Qingyan's life was more important. However, this price really made Lan Jingquang's heart ache. His anger towards Yu Manlon became even stronger. Yu Manlon also knew the anger in Lan Jingquang's heart. She felt guilty and didn't dare to say anything. It would be terrible if she angered Lan Jingquang. After checking on Lan Qingyan's condition, Yu Siqing's brows furrowed. This poison was more complicated than she had imagined. It was on the same level as the disease that appeared in the Yu clan last time. Last time, she spent a lot of time and effort to break it. In the end, she succeeded. However, the Yu clan still suffered heavy losses. It was because of the previous incident that she felt that her medical and poison skills weren't good enough. All along, she felt that her medical and poison skills were unparalleled in the entire Shengxin continent. However, after encountering the poison last time, she realized that there was always someone better than her. The other party's poison skills were even better than hers. If she didn't seize the time to improve her medical and poison skills, the next time she met this opponent, it would be terrible. Last time, she didn't know whether the other party's intention was to take revenge on her or the Yu clan. No matter what, the existence of such an opponent was an unspeakable threat. During this period of time, she had been concentrating on researching medical and poison skills in order to improve herself. The Yu clan naturally complied with all of her requests. All kinds of rare and precious materials were sent to her. Now that Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlon had delivered themselves to her, she naturally had to ask for more. These things were very useful to her. However, she didn't expect to encounter this level of poison in Lan Qingyan's body. This was really not simple. After Yu Manlon and Lan Jingquang noticed the change in Yu Siqing's expression, their hearts couldn't help but sink. It seemed that the situation was much worse than they had imagined. Do you know who poisoned her? Yu Siqing didn't immediately diagnose Lan Qingyin's condition after checking. Instead, she turned around and looked at Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan. It was not easy for the other party to possess such a level of poison. However, whether the other party had obtained such a poison by chance or had a poison master of such caliber backing him, that would require another judgment. Bailey Hongzhuang. Yu Manlan responded immediately. Bailey Hongzhuang. Yu Siqing raised her eyebrows. There was a trace of unfamiliarity between her brows. She had never heard of this name. Who is this person? Limitless Palace has just chosen a young palace master. She and Qingyin had quite a bit of conflict during the Battle of Zhuolu. Qingyin's current state is also related to her. Lan Jingquang said in a deep voice. Hearing this, Yu Siqing finally understood. Originally, she was very worried that the opponent might be targeting them specifically. However, she didn't have any dealings with Limitless Palace. Thinking about it, this was just a dispute between young people. It was just a coincidence. Thinking of this, Yu Siqing also relaxed a little. Aunt, how is Qingyan? Can this poison be cured? Chapter 25-26. This poison is very complicated. It's definitely not a poison that an ordinary poison master can concoct. From Qingyan's pulse, there are no signs of poisoning. Other than being a little weak, there are no other problems. Even for me, I can only be sure that Qingyan has been poisoned. However, I don't know what kind of poison it is or how to detoxify it. I need time. Yu Siqing explained the situation frankly. Based on what she knew, it was most likely a neurotoxin. However, she had no idea how to treat it. Because there were no clues from her pulse, there were no signs of poisoning from Lan Qingyin's appearance. At this moment, Lan Qingyin only showed pain and weakness. However, her lips were not purple, and there were no signs of poisoning in other parts of her body. She had to extract the poisoned blood to be able to determine the cause. However, based on her experience, judging from the other party's secretive nature, it was definitely not an easy task to determine the cause. Hearing Yu Siqing's words, Yu Manlan and Lan Jingquang's hearts sank. Even with Yu Siqing's medical skills, she could still say such words. This proved that this poison was not just difficult to detoxify. Lan Qingyin was obviously in great pain every day. They had no idea how long she could hold on. Aunt, based on Qingyin's current state, I'm afraid she can't hold on for long, right? Lan Jingquang asked slowly in a deep voice. His eyes shone with worry. Although Lan Qingyin had made a big mistake earlier, he was only angry. If something happened to Lan Qingyin, it would be terrible. Yu Siqing glanced at Lan Qingyin and continued. If the other party wanted Qingyin's life, they could have directly used a poison that would kill her immediately. However, the other party didn't. From the effects of the poison so far, the other party wants to see Qingyin in pain and torture her. Therefore, Qingyin will be fine for a short period of time. She will just have to suffer a lot. When she said this, Yu Manlan and Lan Jingquang's expressions changed. They didn't know if this news was good or bad news. That Bailey Hongzhuang is really too vicious. To actually use such a despicable method to torture Qingyin, simply abominable to the extreme. Yu Manlan was so angry that her face turned ashen. The previous matter had already made her extremely angry. Now that she knew Bailey Hongzhuang's original intention, she was about to explode. Even if they had formed quite a bit of enmity during the Battle of Zhuolu, there was no need to use such a vicious method, right? Although she could not personally experience Lan Qingyin's pain, she could tell from Lan Qingyin's expression that this kind of pain was not something an ordinary person could endure. According to what you said, that Bailey Hongzhuang is only 20 years old. This poison should not be made by her. She might have obtained it by chance. Yu Siqing analyzed. For a poison of this level, the other party must have been immersed in the art of poison for a long time, and his attainments in it were astonishing. Her understanding of the art of medicine and poison was far superior to that of ordinary people, but until now, she still had no idea how to deal with this kind of poison. The other party should be about the same age as her. Yu Manlan and Lan Jingquang looked at each other. If this was really the case, then Qing Yin was unlucky. However, this result also made them feel more at ease. Chapter 25-27. Aunt, I'll leave the poison in Qing Yin's body to you. You must cure Qing Yin. Yu Manlan looked at Yu Siqing expectantly. Yu Siqing was their only hope now. If even Yu Siqing couldn't cure Lan Qing Yin, then they really didn't know what to do. If Bailey Hongzhuang had the antidote, then it would be fine. They might be able to get the antidote back by paying a price. But according to Yu Siqing's judgment, Bailey Hongzhuang only got the poison by chance. Then Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't possibly have the antidote. Wouldn't that be terrible? Yu Siqing nodded calmly. I'll do my best, but I can't guarantee the result. To her, this kind of poison was also a challenge. However, every new poison would open a new door for her. Therefore, she didn't mind deciphering it. Now, she could no longer underestimate the power of this kind of poison. So she couldn't guarantee anything. After all, when the Yu clan was in trouble last time, she was confident that there wouldn't be any problems. But in the end, the Yu clan suffered a great loss. Hearing Yu Siqing's words, Yu Manlan and Lan Jingquang looked at each other. Just from Yu Siqing's attitude, they could tell that Yu Siqing didn't have enough confidence. Whether or not Lan Qingyin could be saved would depend on Lan Qingyin's luck. Even though the two of them were indescribably anxious, there was no other way except for this method. They could only pin all their hopes on Yu Siqing. Aunt, then we'll have to trouble you. Lan Jingquang said in a deep voice. If there's anything you need, just let us know. Yu Siqing nodded and said, you guys go out first. I have to hurry. No one knew how long Lan Qingyin could hold on. But under this kind of pain, the torture for a cultivator was extremely terrifying. Hearing this, Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan didn't dare to continue wasting Yu Siqing's time. Based on the current situation, the more time they wasted, the more pain Lan Qingyin would have to endure. Bailey Hongzhuang had always been cultivating in Limitless Palace. When she participated in the Battle of Zhuolu, her strength had a huge breakthrough. Although it was good to break through several levels in a row, Bailey Hongzhuang had to pay attention to other problems. Therefore, during this period of time, she had been cultivating on the stairway to heaven. The Primal Chaos Tablet helped her raise her cultivation level, but that was only in terms of cultivation level, and her elemental energy density was still a distance away. Taking advantage of this period of time, she had to make up for this gap as soon as possible. If she ignored the existence of this problem, then it would be much more difficult for her to break through in the future. All this time, she had never encountered any bottlenecks in her breakthrough. On one hand, it was because she already had a certain understanding of this kind of breakthrough in her previous life. On the other hand, it was because of her solid foundation. To a cultivator, the most important thing was their foundation. Once the foundation was unstable, it was like building a house. Problems could occur at any time. Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was so bitterly cultivating, and the two of them felt gratified. Hongzhuang's success was all for a reason. Even though she had such a great achievement this time, she still didn't have the slightest bit of pride or complacency. Chapter 25-28. A few days later, Di Beichen had successfully arrived at Limitless Palace. Compared to the time when Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang first came to Limitless Palace, many disciples didn't know about Di Beichen's identity. After the Battle of Zhuolu, the relationship between their young palace mistress and Tiangang sect's young sect master was known by the disciples of Limitless Palace. For a moment, all the female disciples were envious of Bailey Hongzhuang. Tiangang sect's young sect master, Di Beichen, was the dream lover of many girls. Now, he had been captured by their young palace mistress. What's more, Li Yongbing and the others had vividly described the domineering performance of their young palace mistress and Di Beichen in the Battle of Zhuolu. Especially when facing the Lan family's young master, Di Beichen's reaction was simply too cool. Therefore, everyone had been looking forward to the appearance of Di Beichen. Once their young palace mistress and Di Beichen were together, the relationship between Limitless Palace and Tiangang sect would be unshakable. At that time, Limitless Palace's status would also rise. This was a great thing. When Di Beichun arrived at Limitless Palace, he noticed that many disciples were looking at him with admiration. Those whispers and discussions accompanied him all the way. He could vaguely hear the discussions of the crowd, and the corner of his lips couldn't help but reveal a smile. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was living well in Limitless Palace during this period of time. All the discussions he heard about Bailey Hongzhuang were praises and support. The results of the Battle of Zhuolu had completely changed Limitless Palace's view of Bailey Hongzhuang. For a long time, no matter where Hongzhuang appeared, she would always be questioned. Now that such a situation had occurred, Di Beichun was truly happy for Bailey Hongzhuang. Soon, Di Beichun arrived at Bailey Hongzhuang's palace. Seeing that Di Beichun had arrived, Bailey Hongzhuang's face instantly revealed a joyful smile. "Beichun, you're here." Di Beichun's handsome face had a faint smile and quickly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. "I rushed over immediately after I finished settling my matters. Did you miss me during this period of time?" The three beasts sat quietly at the side, swinging their feet and sniggering. Bailey Hongzhuang pursed her lips. "Yes, I missed you so much." As soon as these words came out, Di Beichun's eyes widened. His wife was indeed getting bolder and bolder. Since Bailey Hongzhuang, naturally, I'll have to perform well. Di Beichun's smile grew wider and wider. He opened his arms and hugged Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang was stunned for a moment when she was suddenly hugged. However, she did not reject him, and a smile appeared in her eyes. Now that all the top forces in the Shengxian continent knew about their relationship, this feeling was somewhat different from before. Even if they had not held a wedding ceremony, it was open and above board. Bailey Hongzhuang wrapped her arms around Di Beichun's back and slowly closed her eyes. Her entire body was extremely relaxed. There was only one battle left to fight. After that, she would be completely at ease. And that day was not far away. Di Beichun could feel the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's state of mind. Immediately, the arm that was hugging Bailey Hongzhuang tightened. Hongzhuang had shed a lot of burden compared to before. Just from her performance alone, one could see that. Chapter 25-29. Following the sound of footsteps from afar, Di Beichun let go of Bailey Hongzhuang and turned around to see Yu Linfeng and Nan Gongwu slowly walking towards them. After seeing Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang, Nan Gongwu and Yu Linfeng's faces also revealed a big smile. "I'm really looking forward to the day you two get married," Nan Gongwu said with a smile. "Hongzhuang will definitely be the most beautiful bride in the world." Although she didn't know how Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang met, seeing how close the two of them were and how they had supported each other along the way, she knew that the relationship between the two of them was incomparable to that of ordinary people. She only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to complete her revenge as soon as possible and enjoy the happiness that belonged to her. Hearing Nan Gongwu's words, Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang's faces revealed a smile. That day was not far away. Hongzhuang, send people to keep an eye on the movements of the Lan family and the Yu family. The news has already been sent back, Nan Gongwu said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. What's the situation now? She had been waiting for this specific news. Only after confirming it could she confirm the next step of the plan. It said that Lan Xinyan's poison acted up not long after she returned to the Lan family. No one in the Lan family could treat her, so they hurriedly sent Lan Xinyan to the Yu family. The three beasties also came to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. It seems that the situation was exactly as their master had thought. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a playful smile. This situation was already within her expectations. It seemed that Lan Xinyan's life was not easy now. Nan Gongwu and the rest noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's smile and understood. "Hongzhuang, you poisoned her?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head, frankly admitting it. "That's right. When Lan Xinyan and I clashed during the Battle of Zhuolu, I fed her this poison." As soon as she said this, Nan Gongwu and the others looked at each other, but they all felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was right. Compared to what Lan Jingquang did to Bailey Hongzhuang's family, this was nothing. According to the news from the spies, Lan Xinyan's poison was not fatal, but extremely painful. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. This poison itself is not fatal, but it is very torturous. She would not let Lan Xinyan die so easily, because she still had many things to do. Only when all these things were revealed to Lan Jingquang's family, that would be the most important moment. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's reply, the three of them could not help but be stunned. So, was Bailey Hongzhuang deliberately teasing the Lan family? The Lan family thought that Lan Xinyan was going to die and hurriedly sent her to the Yu family. I'm afraid that the Lan family is not peaceful during this period. If they knew the true effects of this poison, I'm afraid they would be angered to death. Nangong Wu's face also showed a playful smile. It seemed that this situation was more interesting than she had imagined. Di Beichen also knew about the poison during the Battle of Zhuolu, but he did not care. No matter what Hongzhuang did, his attitude was only one: support. The Yu family's Yusiqing's medical and poison skills are very good. Can she neutralize this poison? Yu Linfeng, who had been silent all this while, slowly spoke up. Chapter 25:30. Hearing this, Nangong Wu and the others couldn't help but think of the disaster caused by Bailey Hongzhuang's poison in Yu clan. In terms of medical and poison skills, Yusiqing might not be Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent. In any case, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't intend to use this opportunity to kill Lan Xinyan. As long as she could stall for some time, it would be enough. According to the news from the Yu clan, after Lan Jingquang and his group went to the Yu clan, they were given the cold shoulder. Because of the previous incident, the Yu clan had some complaints about Yu Manlan and Lan Xinyan, so they didn't welcome them this time. However, after Lan Jingquang gave them a lot of gifts, the situation changed. It said that in order for Yu Siqing to treat Lan Xinyan, Lan Jingquang paid a big price. Di Beichen frowned. Yu Siqing is Lan Xinyan's great-aunt. Does she need to ask for a reward for treating Lan Xinyan? Yu Linfeng nodded and said slowly, "You don't know this. Yu Manlan is famous for being cold-blooded and heartless. Even if it's her own people, if you want her to treat someone, you have to see if she's in a good mood. Besides, the previous incident made her feel resentful. It's not strange for her to do something like this." Her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with coldness. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sigh. If you're not a family, you won't enter the same house. No matter if it's Yu Siqing or Lan Jingquang, their family only valued benefits and not feelings. Therefore, their way of interacting was also like this. It was really amazing. If Lan Jingquang's family had the slightest bit of affection, they wouldn't have treated them so poorly. Now that they had to pay such a price, they deserved it. Is there any progress on Yu Siqing's treatment of Lan Xinyan? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Nangong Wu shook her head. It said that Yu Siqing is thinking of a way to cure the poison. However, from Lan Jingquang and the others' serious expressions, I'm afraid that Yu Siqing doesn't have enough confidence. At this point, Nangong Wu couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement. Her ability was really amazing. If Lan Jingquang and the others knew that there was an enemy like Bailey Hongzhuang waiting for revenge from afar, they would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. They didn't have much time left. It wouldn't be long before everything would be revealed to them. That's good news. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. The Lan family had spent a large amount of resources, and Yu Siqing's medical and poison skills had also been questioned. From the looks of it, it will be very difficult for Yu Siqing to harm you at the divine pond of ice and snow in 3 months. Di Beichen's face was relaxed. Initially, he was worried that they would encounter a lot of problems after going to the Lan family. Now that Lan Xinyan had become like this, the entire Lan family was in turmoil. Thinking about it, by the time they went to the divine pond of ice snow, Lan Xinyan might not be able to participate. This poison will probably be cured in less than 3 months. At least in these 3 months, Lan Xinyan's strength won't be able to increase by much. Everyone in the Lan family is focused on this matter. I'm afraid that they won't have the energy to pay attention to me. At this time, Yu Linfeng's voice rang out again. Next month is the Yu family's day to recruit doctors. Every time the Yu family recruits doctors, it's a big event in Yutian City. I just don't know if the Yu family will continue to hold it this time. Chapter 25:31. The Yu clan is recruiting doctors? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows rose slightly, her dark and deep eyes filled with interest. This really made her very interested. That's right. Yu Linfeng nodded. As a medical family, the Yu clan's reputation in the Shengxian continent has always been very resounding. Every 3 years, the Yu clan would recruit doctors. The selected doctors would be nurtured by the Yu clan and learn the art of healing and poison. Most importantly, they would be trained in medicine. A portion of these doctors would stay in the Yu clan, while the rest would be recommended by the Yu clan to other powers. It is because of this that the Yu clan's position is so stable. Many powers owe the Yu clan a favor, and those doctors who went to other clans would also thank the Yu clan and return the favor. Following Yu Linfeng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang also completely understood. So there was such a relationship between the two. No wonder the Yu clan's position was so high. Using this method for many years, the benefits would be huge. It seemed like the Yu clan was helping some doctors to improve their medical skills without any requirements. But in reality, the Yu clan's benefits were definitely not small. No power would not need doctors. Even if the Yu clan did not ask for anything and recommended doctors, the other party would not accept them without giving them anything. Therefore, this was an extremely profitable business. The Yu clan had lost a lot of people because of that incident. I think they would place extra importance on this recruitment, so this plan should not be canceled. Di Beichen's eyes were filled with wisdom as he analyzed the situation. Nan Gongwu nodded. Indeed, the Yu clan would not give up. This was the best time for the Yu clan to recover their strength. The previous loss had greatly damaged the Yu clan's strength. If they did not quickly recover, it would not be a good thing for the Yu clan. If their judgment was not wrong, the scale of the Yu clan's recruitment this time would be bigger than before. The number of doctors they would recruit would also be more. This is a good opportunity. Why don't we take this opportunity to go to Yutian City again? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a charming smile. She had originally planned to go to Yutian City, but she did not think that there would be such an opportunity. In this way, many doctors would go to Yutian City together. Then, when they went there, no one would suspect them. She could even sneak into the Yu clan as a doctor. Towards the Yu clan, Bailey Hongzhuang's hatred was not any weaker than Lan Jingquang's. If it wasn't because Yu's mischief, all this would not have happened. Grandpa and Grandma would live happily together. Without Yu Siqing's help, Lan Jingquang would not be able to transfer the rainbow deity pearl from her body into Lan Qingyan's body. In this way, even if Lan Jingquang was crazy enough to take out the rainbow sacred pearl from her body, as long as Lan Qingyan was unable to merge with it, their family would not be reduced to such a state. With Yu, as long as Bailey Hongzhuang thought of how her father and mother had knelt in front of the Yu clan while holding her in swaddling clothes, begging them to save her, not only did they not help at all, they even tried to kill them. She felt the hatred in her bones tremble. This was a blood feud. Chapter 25:32. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yu Linfeng and the rest looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. They didn't know what Bailey Hongzhuang was planning. The last time we went to Yutian City, we were in too much of a hurry, so we couldn't do anything to the Yu clan. Now that there are so many people entering Yutian City, we don't have to worry about hiding. Coincidentally, I also want to see Lan Qingyan's situation. I can also see Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan in advance. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a playful smile. Back then, she didn't have the ability and could only allow them to do whatever they wanted. But now, she had to collect interest bit by bit. The Yu clan, Lan Jingquang's family, she would make them pay a painful price. When she saw the pain her grandmother had suffered all these years, from a young and beautiful beauty to a person that even she didn't want to see, this kind of pain was definitely hard for ordinary people to understand. From then on, she made up her mind. She would return all of this to Yu Siqing. The pain Yu Siqing had inflicted on her grandmother all these years, she would return it to her double. Originally, it would take a lot of effort to get in touch with Yu Siqing. Now that there was such a good opportunity in front of her, she naturally wouldn't miss it. She had also prepared a big gift for Yu Siqing. A gift that Yu Siqing felt was very familiar, but she couldn't understand it at all. Yu Linfeng and the rest looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Just from Bailey Hongzhuang's tone, they already knew that the Yu clan was in trouble this time. Last time, Bailey Hongzhuang's actions had already caused the Yu clan to suffer a huge loss. But from Bailey Hongzhuang's words, they didn't do anything. This meant that when Bailey Hongzhuang went to the Yu clan this time, she would definitely do something. Just by thinking about it, they could guess the situation that the Yu clan would encounter. Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu looked at each other. They could vaguely guess what Bailey Hongzhuang was going to do. However, they believed that Bailey Hongzhuang already had a plan in mind. Since he wanted revenge, they had always supported him. Hongzhuang, there are many smart people in the Yu clan. Yu Siqing is even more vicious and merciless. If you go to Yutian City, you must be careful. Do not be careless. Yu Linfeng warned. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Master, don't worry. I won't let anything happen to me. The last time she went to Yutian City, she already had a certain amount of experience. She also had a certain understanding of the Yu clan spies. What's more, she wasn't strong enough the last time. This time, she and Di Beichun had improved in all aspects. I will accompany Hongzhuang. You can rest assured. His deep and generous voice was filled with determination. It also gave off an indescribable sense of security. Protecting Hongzhuang was his responsibility. Yutian City wasn't a tiger's den. No matter what kind of defense the other party had, they were confident that they could deal with it. Seeing this, Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu were also relieved. Whether it was Di Beichun or Bailey Hongzhuang, they were all outstanding people in the younger generation. With their strength, it shouldn't be a problem for them to deal with this. After all, even Yu clan's young master couldn't be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Wu. Chapter 25-33. After Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu left, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun entered the bedroom to discuss the matters of the trip to Yutian City. Di Beichun, actually I was planning to go to Yutian City. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. She had been waiting for news from the Yu clan spies. As long as Lan Qingyan went to the Yu clan and Yu Siqing was unable to break the antidote, then she would have a chance. Di Beichun nodded slightly and did not reply, only listening to Bailey Hongzhuang. I was planning to disguise myself and enter the Yu clan with another identity. As long as Lan Qingyan's poison is not broken, then I only need to say that I can break the poison. Then Lan Jingquang and the others will definitely treat me as an important guest. This way, I can also do some things to the Yu clan. However, it just so happens that the Yu clan is recruiting doctors. If I go as a doctor, it will not attract attention. The Yu clan did so many evil things in the past. Since I'm going to face the Lan clan soon, then the Yu clan will be prepared. Once Yu Siqing knew that her parents weren't dead and had recovered, she would know that her poison had been neutralized and would be on her guard. At that time, it will not be so convenient for us to make a move. However, before all of this is revealed, it would be better if we settle the Yu clan's matter first. Lan Jingquang will lose a huge support. When my parents and I appear in the Lan clan together, the situation will also change. Her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with wisdom. During this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang had been thinking about whether to deal with the Yu clan or the Lan clan first. However, in the end, it would be best to deal with the Yu clan first. Only by making Lan Jingquang lose his left and right arms would they have a better effect when the time comes. Therefore, she fed Lan Qingyan poison during the Battle of Zhuolu. Perhaps everything was predestined. She also did not think that her plan would go so smoothly. After Di Beichun heard the plan in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind, his eyes brightened. Wife, your idea is very good. Compared to the first method, this second method is the best way to enter the Yu clan. When the time comes, there will be many strangers in the Yu clan. If we leave after doing all this, no one will notice. At that time, Lan Jingquang and the others will definitely panic. Once the Yu clan is in danger or a plague, with Lan Jingquang's personality, he will definitely leave. Then, the enmity between the Yu clan and Lan will be formed. Not only that, when we were heading towards the Lan clan, the Yu clan must still be busy with their own matters. They simply had no time to care about the Lan clan situation. 2. Bei Chun and Lan was Yus. Lan Qingyan and Lan and the others were Lans. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. That's right. That's the way. The two of them looked at each other. They had already made up their minds. Next, it was time for them to take action. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately wrote a letter and sent it to the Sun Moon Palace. She had to tell her parents about her plan so that they would not worry about her. Chapter 25-34. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had made their decision, Bailey Hongzhuang began to immerse herself in making the poison. She would give them a taste of their own medicine. The Yu clan was most proficient in the art of medicine and poison. She would use this poison to give the Yu clan and Yu Siqing a slap in the face. Yu Siqing would never have thought that the baby, who was not a threat in her eyes, would give her a slap in the area she was most proficient in. It was not that she did not want revenge, but the time had not come yet. The evil things she had done in the past, she would have to taste the consequences sooner or later. Bailey Hongzhuang was not a kind person. In her opinion, the entire Yu clan was an accomplice in that matter. Di Beichun and the others also knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's poison was very important, so they did not disturb her. However, no matter what Bailey Hongzhuang needed, they would always find it for Bailey Hongzhuang. Yu Linfeng was also very generous to Bailey Hongzhuang. As long as it was something in Wuji Palace, once Bailey Hongzhuang needed it, he would immediately send it over. Nangong Wu was also very interested in the art of medicine and poison. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang busy with these herbs all day long, she also felt very curious. After 2 confrontations with Yu Siqing, Bailey Hongzhuang had a good understanding of Yu Siqing's strength. This time, she wanted to make a poison that even Yu Siqing could not detoxify, and let this famous family in the Shengxian continent suffer a huge blow. It was precisely because she wanted to ensure that the effect of the poison could not be detoxified that Bailey Hongzhuang spent a lot of time on it. In fact, during this time, Bailey Hongzhuang had also been thinking about the method of making the poison. After so many things, she found that only this kind of poison could have enough lethality and destructive power in the face of an entire force. Just like how she dealt with the Qing dynasty's royal family. A poison was enough to make the strength of the Qing dynasty's royal family regress by decades or even destroy them. While Bailey Hongzhuang was working hard to concoct the poison, Yu Siqing was working hard to neutralize the poison in Lan Qingyan's body. Lan Qingyan was already tortured beyond recognition by the pain. Sometimes, she even wished that she could just die like this. That way, she wouldn't have to endure such pain. She begged Yu Siqing to think of a way to alleviate her pain, but the answer Yu Siqing gave her made her feel even more despair. This kind of pain was all-pervasive, and ordinary methods could not reduce the pain at all. Only when Yu Siqing saw that Lan Qingyan really could not take it anymore would Yu Siqing make a move. At this time, Lan Qingyan could take the opportunity to rest for a while, but in the end, the medicine's effect would wear off and she would wake up again from the pain. Lan Qingyan had fainted several times due to dehydration. During this process, her hatred towards Bailey Hongzhuang had reached its peak. She had never thought that a single poison from back then could cause her to suffer to such an extent. She thought that the poison was nothing special and that it would be easy to detoxify it with her grandaunt's strength. But now, she had no clue. During this time, Yu Siqing had tried a lot of methods, but in the end, the results were not good, and she could not successfully detoxify it. Lan Qingyan even felt that there was a high possibility that she would die from the pain. Chapter 25-35. Seeing Lan Qingyan like this, Yu Manlan felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. Ever since Lan Qingyan was young, She had never suffered such great pain. In a short period of time, Lan Qingyin's figure had become much thinner. If this continued, Yu Manlan was really worried that she would never have the chance to see Lan Qingyin again. However, no matter how anxious she was, she did not dare to show the slightest bit of complaint in front of Yu Siqing. Lan Qingyin was the same. Compared to Yu Manlan's pure anxiety, Lan Jingquang's mood was much more complicated. Ever since Lan Qingyin's accident, the Lan clan situation had changed. This was within Lan Jingquang's expectations, so he had always sent people to pay close attention to the Lan clan situation. In the past, Lan Qingyin's performance was not bad. With him controlling everything, their position was unshakable. But now, Lan Qingyin had caused such a ruckus during the Battle of Zhuolu. Now, her life and death were unknown. In addition, Lan Hongtai had already made it clear that he would never allow Lan Jingquang to sit on the patriarch's seat. So now, there were many people in the Lan family who had other ideas. Although this was within Lan Jingquang's expectations, he was currently in the Yu clan and could not leave. It was not easy to control these things. At this moment, Lan Jingquang was extremely disgusted with Wuji Palace and Bailey Hongzhuang. If it were not for these things, how could everything that should have been done smoothly become like this? When Yu Manlan knew that Yu Siqing was going to organize the Yu clan's recruitment of doctors, she could not help but feel anxious. Aunt Qingyin's situation is so serious. She still has not been cured. If you're going to organize the recruitment of doctors, what will happen to Qingyin? Yu Manlan's eyes were full of anxiety. Yu Siqing was already the last hope to save Lan Qingyin. During this period of time, no matter how anxious she was, she did not dare to disturb Yu Siqing. But this time, Yu Siqing actually wanted to organize other things. I will organize the recruitment of doctors for only a day. Other times, other people will go on my behalf. It won't waste much time. Yu Siqing said indifferently. But we don't know how long Qingyin can hold on. Aunt, can you not go? Yu Manlan could not hide the nervousness in her words. Lan Qingyin's current situation already made her very worried every day. If Yu Siqing still did not look after her, then what would happen to Lan Qingyin? Hearing Yu Manlan's words, Yu Siqing couldn't help but reveal a hint of impatience. Yu Manlan, you really don't think of yourself as a member of the Yu clan after getting married. Don't you know what kind of situation the Yu clan is in? For so many years, the Yu clan had never suffered such a huge blow. Now was the time when they needed people. Could it be that the Yu clan didn't need to recover their strength? Didn't they need to improve themselves? Do you only have the Lan family in your heart? Yu Siqing's eyes were filled with anger. It wasn't that Yu Manlan didn't know about the Yu clan situation, but she still did such a rude thing. It was really infuriating. The head of the Yu clan, Yu Taotian, was about to look for Yu Siqing to discuss the matter of recruiting a doctor. He didn't expect to hear a roar coming from the house just as he walked to the door. Instantly, his disgust towards Yu Manlan deepened. Yu Manlan's daughter's performance in the Yu clan was not outstanding to begin with. It was not a bad idea to get an ally for the Yu clan when she married. Chapter 2536. Yu Manlan was stunned by Yu Siqing's roar. She was just worried about Qingyin's condition. Now that she heard Yu Siqing's words, she had no room to refute. The Yu clan's current situation was indeed a serious loss. Recruiting new blood was an urgent matter. She did not intend to stop the Yu clan from recruiting doctors. She only hoped to delay the recruitment. After all, the most important thing now was Lan Qingyin's life. And I didn't mean it that way, Yu Manlan explained. However, Yu Siqing did not want to say anything more to Yu Manlan. She immediately asked her to leave. Get out. Hearing this, Yu Manlan's face turned red and white. She did not dare to say anything and walked out. Yu Manlan had just walked out of the house when she saw Yu Taotian's ashen face. She could not help but widen her eyes in panic. From Yu Taotian's expression, she could tell that he must have heard their conversation. She had offended her father again. Father! Yu Manlan opened her mouth to explain, but Yu Taotian ignored her. He walked into Yu Siqing's house as if he did not see her. Seeing this, Yu Manlan stood outside the house in a daze. She recalled what had happened. Her head was still buzzing. She had no idea what had happened. After Bailey Hongzhuang finished all the preparations, she and Di Beichun packed their luggage and prepared to leave for Yutian City. Master, Mistress, will be leaving first. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yulin Feng and Nangong Wu in front of her. Her exquisite face was filled with a dazzling smile. Yulin Feng nodded slightly. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang, who had matured a lot, his heart was filled with emotions. The current Bailey Hongzhuang was much more mature than when he first met her at the assessment competition. She could already take charge. Nangong Wu held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, her enchanting and bright face filled with concern. Hongzhuang, Beichun, you must be careful when you go out. We will wait for you to come back. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Mayam, don't worry. We will definitely return safely with good news. I'll protect Hongzhuang, Di Beichun said. Hearing this, Nangong Wu and Yulin Feng looked at each other, then smiled and sent Bailey Hongzhuang and Yulin Feng off. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun set off together with the three demonic beasts. When the disciples of Limitless Palace saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun suddenly leaving, they were puzzled. They thought that the two of them were going out to train again. In a few days, the Yu clan will start recruiting doctors. Right now, many people have already rushed to Yutian City. Yutian City should be very lively right now. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a faint smile. This time, they were not as nervous as before. In this kind of situation where there were so many people, fishing in troubled waters was never a difficult thing to do. Di Beichun nodded. We have to hurry up. The earlier we reach Yutian City, the earlier we can understand the situation. According to their thoughts, it would be best if they could make some friends after reaching Yutian City. Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. The two of them walked forward as if they were taking a stroll in the park. However, if one looked carefully, they would realize that although they seemed to be walking slowly, their speed was not slow at all. Chapter 25:37 Yutian City. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun arrived at Yutian City, they felt that the atmosphere was completely different from the last time they were here. The entire Yutian City was much more lively than before. There was an endless stream of people, and even the number of stalls had increased. The last time they were here, Yutian City was filled with people from the Yu clan. This time, there were many outsiders. When the others noticed Bailey Hongzhuang and Yutian City's appearance, they did not feel that there was anything wrong. There had been too many people entering Yutian City recently. Furthermore, the recruitment event that was held once every 3 years was a big event in Yutian City. At this moment, Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang had already changed their appearances. It seemed that no one would be able to link them to their previous appearances. The two of them appeared here as a couple. Di Beichun was not proficient in medicine, so he accompanied Bailey Hongzhuang this time. The two of them casually walked into a restaurant, only to find that all the rooms were filled. The people who came here were not only doctors who were participating in the recruitment event, but also people who came to watch the show. It was only at this time that Yutian City was extremely open. People from all walks of life could be seen here. Not only that, there were also some small powers who wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to recruit some doctors. After all, every time there was a recruitment event, almost all the capable doctors would come. Firstly, they wanted to enter the Yu clan to learn more about medicine. Secondly, they wanted to seek better opportunities. The Yu clan's position in the medical world was deeply rooted. As long as the Yu clan was able to recruit a doctor, it was as if they were plated with a layer of gold. Therefore, no doctor wanted to give up this opportunity. However, if they wanted to be recruited by the Yu clan, they would need to be extremely outstanding. If they were just an ordinary doctor, they would not be able to enter the Yu clan. Therefore, many small powers thought that even if they could not recruit the most outstanding doctors, they would still be able to find the most outstanding ones. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun couldn't help but sigh in their hearts when they saw this. This was indeed a grand occasion for Yutian City. The two of them walked around Yutian City's restaurants and finally found a place to stay. However, there was only one room left. Hearing this, Di Baichen turned around and smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang. We'll take this one. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally knew the meaning behind Di Baichen's smile. She only glared at Di Baichen and said. Di Baichen's smile widened. It was really interesting to tease his wife every time. As the two of them stayed in the inn, they learned a lot of information. In fact, the entire Yution city was talking about the recruitment conference, so almost all the news was shared. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen rushed over. Their speed was very fast, and they finally arrived 2 days before the recruitment conference. Now, everyone was talking about the recruitment conference in 2 days. Coincidentally, Bailey Hongzhuang and Yution did not know anything about it, so they carefully listened to everyone's conversation. After learning about it, they finally understood that the recruitment conference was not just a conference. It was divided into the preliminary round and the final round. Only after passing the preliminary round would they be able to enter the most important final round. Chapter 25:38. The finals were where the genius doctors would compete. Every time the finals of the recruitment tournament were held, it would attract a lot of attention. Many doctors relied on the finals of the recruitment tournament to show their talents and gain fame. Bailey Hongzhuang listened to the discussions of the crowd. After seeing the excitement on the faces of the young doctors, she understood the importance of the recruitment tournament in the hearts of the doctors in the Shengxian continent. A carp leaping over the Dragon's Gate. This was the status of this recruitment event in everyone's mind. However, she did not come here with such a goal in mind. Have you heard that the Lan clan's young clan master, Lan Qingyan, is currently undergoing treatment in the Yu clan? Even great master Yu Siqing was unable to cure the poison in her body. In the hall of the restaurant, a 25-year-old man spoke to the crowd as if he knew an incredible secret. As soon as he said this, many people immediately agreed with him. I've also heard this news. It said that Lan Qingyan has been tortured beyond recognition by this poison. Do you know who poisoned her? Who poisoned her? Everyone's faces were filled with curiosity. The Yu clan's matters had always been tight-lipped. Therefore, although everyone had heard some rumors, they did not know the exact situation. Looking at the curious faces of the crowd, the man's face was filled with pride. Limitless Palace's young palace master, Bailey Hongzhuang. Following the man's words, there was an uproar in the restaurant. I heard that Limitless Palace's young palace master, Bailey Hongzhuang, is the champion of the battle for deer. She is very powerful. I didn't expect her to poison Lan Qingyan. Is it because she can't defeat Lan Qingyan? The battle for deer, as the top competition in the Shengxian continent, had always been very concerned about it. However, they were not at the center of the incident, so they had only heard rumors. When Bailey Hongzhuang heard the crowd suddenly talking about her, she could not help but be surprised. Not only that, from the crowd's expression, it seemed that everyone had heard of her name. Are you surprised that you're suddenly so famous? After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Di Baichen lowered his voice and laughed. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Previously, she was still in existence that most people did not know. She did not expect that in less than a month after the battle for deer, so many people already knew her name. Di Baichen chuckled. Every time the results of the Battle of Zhuolu are announced to the public, you appeared out of nowhere and won 2 first places. Naturally, it will leave a deep impression. You haven't returned to Tiangang's sect yet. The disciples of the sect were also surprised when they found out about your identity. Li Muzi and the others also came to talk to me about this. However, you didn't go back with me, so they could only ask me to congratulate you on their behalf. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang understood Di Baichen's words. It was no wonder that every time there was a battle for the throne, everyone would sharpen their brains and try to squeeze in. Once they succeeded, they would truly become famous throughout the world. That's where you're wrong. I heard that Bailey Hongzhuang cut off Lan Qingyan's arm. She shouldn't be any weaker than Lan Qingyan. Moreover, Lan Qingyan's ranking is so low. It shouldn't be like this. If that's the case, doesn't it mean that Bailey Hongzhuang's poison is more powerful than Master Yu Siqing's? Chapter 2539. In the eyes of the doctors and poison masters, Yu Siqing was the authority in the art of medicine and poison, an insurmountable mountain. However, there was a poison that even Yu Siqing couldn't detoxify. This was out of the ordinary. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, but no one could give an answer to this person's question. This was because this news was the truth. If Yu Siqing could detoxify it, then Lan Qingyan wouldn't have stayed in the Yu clan. The doctors and poison masters who worshipped Yu Siqing also found it hard to accept this news. After all, in their hearts, Yu Siqing was omnipotent in the art of medicine and poison. They didn't expect such a thing to happen now. They didn't know how to judge. After Bailey Hongzhuang noticed everyone's expression, she understood that her thoughts weren't wrong. This matter had indeed caused a certain blow to Yu Siqing's reputation. However, this was what she liked to see. Presumably, Yu Siqing would be extremely unhappy when she found out about this. After all, she was extremely proud in this aspect. The hall, which was originally bustling with noise and excitement, suddenly became silent. It was obvious that everyone was already used to the Yu clan's position as the #1 in the medical field. Now that something like this had happened, they didn't know if the situation would change or not. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun finished their meal, they returned to the house and directly called for a waiter. "Dear guests, what can I do for you?" The waiter asked with a smile. Di Beichun directly placed a bag of money on the table and said, "We're new here, so we don't know much about the process of this recruitment event. Why don't you explain this matter to us, and these are all yours." Hearing Di Beichun's words, the waiter's face suddenly revealed a deep smile. He reached out and placed the bag of money in his hand. After feeling the weight of the bag, the waiter's attitude became even more cordial and enthusiastic. "Dear guests, you've asked the right person for this matter. I can't be more familiar with this situation." The servant immediately told Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun all the processes and things he knew. He himself was from Yutian City, so these things could be said to be very clear. Every year at this time, people would ask about this kind of thing, and it was also a good opportunity for the waiter to earn money. After this understanding, Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang also completely understood. This method was simple and convenient, much more convenient than learning from others. Moreover, given the current situation, their actions would not arouse anyone's suspicions. According to the attendant, on the first day of the recruitment, they needed to go to the central plaza of Yutian City to receive their tokens. All the doctors and poison masters who wanted to participate would receive a special number. Doctors had their own number, while poison masters had their own number. After receiving the number plate, the doctor or poison master would wait for the preliminary round according to the number on the plate. Every time, there would be a lot of people in the preliminary round, so the preliminary round would take a lot of time. The earlier they participated in the preliminary round, the later they would have to wait. The final round would be held a few days later, but the specific time would depend on the end of the preliminary round. Chapter 2540. It was precisely because the Yu clan had recruited a lot more people than usual that a few doctors who usually had no hope had come to try their luck. This might be the best opportunity in their lives. Once they missed it, they would not have another chance in the future. After all, no matter what kind of criteria the Yu clan used to recruit them, as long as they could pass the recruitment ceremony, their reputation would be different from before. I never thought that the Yu clan's influence would be so big. The heavens really don't have eyes. Xiao Hei's face was full of resentment. This Yu clan did not have the slightest bit of morality to help the world. On the contrary, they were an extremely powerful clan. However, it was this kind of clan that was the holy land in the hearts of the Shengxian continent's doctors and poison masters. Speaking of which, it was really a pity. Yu Siqing herself is so vicious, yet she is a doctor. Isn't this a very ironic thing? Xiao Bai shook its head. From its point of view, Yu Siqing did not learn medicine to save people, but to harm people. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly. It's not a pity to destroy such a cold-blooded and heartless clan like the Yu clan. However, to destroy the Holy Land in the hearts of the Shengxian continent's doctors and poison masters, I don't know if it will hurt the hearts of many people. She had never considered this problem before. If the Yu clan was a clan with a conscience that helped the world, then even if she had a deep hatred with Yu Siqing, she would not destroy the entire Yu clan. Unfortunately, the reality was not so. The entire Yu clan was in cahoots with evil, cold-blooded, and heartless to the bone. Just from the fact that Yu Siqing needed to collect such a large amount of remuneration to treat Lan Qingyan, it could be seen that for a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang sympathized with Lan Qingyan. This was because Lan Qingyan's family members were all so cold and heartless. In comparison, although Bailey Hongzhuang had suffered many years of humiliation in the general's residence, at least the people by her side now treated her with sincerity and had never asked for anything in return. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's worry, Di Beichen reached out and held Bailey Hongzhuang's soft hand. His voice was magnetic and full of persuasion. Wife, every world has a certain order. When a power disappears, there will always be a new power rising. This is just like the fall and rise of a dynasty. Just like how we have destroyed the Yu clan now, it might be a great loss to the doctors and poison masters, but in the future, a medical aristocratic family with medical ethics might appear. At that time, who can say that everything is wrong now? The gentle and elegant smile on his extraordinarily handsome face swept across Bailey Hongzhuang's heart like a spring breeze, brushing away all her original worries. What's more, the Yu clan's own power, their goal has always been to seek benefits. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. That's right. I was thinking too much. Just now, when she was eating in the restaurant's lobby, she saw the excited eyes of all the doctors and poison masters when they talked about the recruitment conference. She could feel that it was a kind of worship that came from the bottom of their hearts. Therefore, she felt that she shouldn't have destroyed everyone's hopes. However, after thinking about it carefully, things were just as Di Beichen had said. Everything was related to karma. It was impossible for her to not take revenge for the Yu clan. Chapter 2541. All this while, the Yu clan has always prioritized benefits. Over the years, many sick people have come to the Yu clan to seek medical treatment, but as long as they don't pay enough, the Yu clan wouldn't care at all. Who knows how many bones and tears have been buried in Yutian City. Under the Yu clan's influence, the doctors they nurtured were also affected by this kind of atmosphere. In comparison, the destruction of this kind of power would only cause a certain amount of damage in a short period of time. They might develop better in the future. Actually, there are also many medical families that have been developing these years. It's just that they have always been suppressed by the Yu clan to strengthen the Yu clan's position. Di Beichen's gaze was gentle and doting. Actually, he always knew that his wife was kind. If others didn't hurt her, she wouldn't take the initiative to hurt others. The reason why Bailey Hongzhuang felt this way was because she herself was a doctor, so she could empathize with the expectations of other doctors. Previously, when Bailey Hongzhuang was busy concocting the poison, he had already asked around about the recruitment event and the Yu clan's movements in recent years. This was also to let Bailey Hongzhuang not have any psychological burden. Bailey Hongzhuang could hear the deep sense of comfort in Di Beichen's words. The smile on her lips widened, her smile bright and beautiful. Beichen, thank you. Thank you for always staying by my side, supporting me no matter what happens. Di Beichen saw the seriousness and gratitude in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. He stretched out his right hand and lightly tapped the tip of Bailey Hongzhuang's nose. Little fool. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang had already fallen into Di Beichen's embrace. Di Beichen's right hand stroked Bailey Hongzhuang's silky hair, his lips curling into a happy smile. How could he not love this kind of woman? To him, even if he had to destroy everything in this world, as long as his wife was happy, that was enough. He didn't care about what other people thought. Upon seeing this, the three beasts tacitly returned to the Chaos Ring. They were really looking forward to the marriage between their master and Di Beichen. In the blink of an eye, the day of the recruitment meeting arrived. Early in the morning, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun woke up early and headed towards the central plaza of Yutian City. They needed to get their tokens first. Di Beichun did not participate in the recruitment conference, so he only accompanied Bailey Hongzhuang. When the two of them arrived at the central square, they discovered that the central square was filled with a sea of people. The bustling scene was not the slightest bit worse than when the Battle of the Four Palaces was held. It was just that the flow of people was more complicated. Even though it was just the preliminary round, there were still many people paying attention to it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun scanned the crowd and found the place to get their tokens. However, there was already a very long queue. As they knew that the number of people in the queue would be very shocking, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had especially woken up early in the morning. They never thought that there would be so many people here. Looking at the long queue, Bailey Hongzhuang even suspected that this group of people had been queuing since last night. The number of people here is really terrifying. The sun will be high up in the sky in a while. I wonder how long we'll have to wait here. Baisher sighed. Judging from the number of people here, it would be impossible for them to wait for more than a few hours. Chapter 2542. Xiaobai will stay with me. When the queue is about to end, it will go to the restaurant to inform you to come. Di Beichun's face rippled with a gentle and refined smile. The weather had been hot recently. How could he bear to let his wife be exposed to the scorching sun for several hours? Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled, but after seeing Di Beichun's doting eyes, the corners of her lips blossomed into a bright smile. I'm fine. Over the years, she had experienced all kinds of difficult situations. Even if the scorching sun was in the sky, it did not matter. However, Di Beichun shook his head with a tough attitude. Go back and rest obediently. When you participated in the competition in the past, I was unable to be by your side. Now that I'm by your side, let me do it. All this time, he did not have much time to spend with Hongzhuang and was unable to give her more love. Now, he would do everything that he should do one by one. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with warmth. Apart from Di Beichun, no one else had given her such concern. Although it was a very simple matter, it was enough to warm her for a long time. Perhaps, one day, she would also not have to work hard. Relying on Di Beichun like this was also a kind of indescribable happiness. Go back quickly. I'll inform you when the time comes. Di Beichun's face was stern, as if he was going to use force if Bailey Hongzhuang did not go back. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, then nodded helplessly. Then I'll go back first. Di Beichun nodded and watched Bailey Hongzhuang's back as she turned to leave. Only then did he walk into the long queue. After taking a few steps, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but turn to look at the tall and imposing figure. The high and mighty young sect master of the Tiangang sect had now become an ordinary man. Xiao He and Baisher accompanied Bailey Hongzhuang by her side. Seeing the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's face for a long time, Xiao He and Baisher were also full of smiles. Sure enough, Master was happiest when she was with Di Beichun. Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the restaurant. At this moment, the restaurant was undoubtedly much more deserted. Apart from the people in the restaurant, almost everyone else had gone to the central plaza. In the house, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but look through the windowsill. Even though there was a sea of people, Bailey Hongzhuang could still see the unique figure at a glance. Di Beichun would always be different in her heart. Just as she was looking at Di Beichun's back, Di Beichun suddenly turned his head and smiled in the direction of the windowsill. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled. The smile on her lips became even more brilliant. This feeling was really good. While waiting like this, Xiao Bai's figure also appeared in the house as the afternoon arrived. Master, the queue is almost there. Let's go. Xiao Bai's face was full of excitement. Her fluffy hair was a little wet at this moment. It was really hot under the scorching sun. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and smiled faintly. Let's go quickly. When Bailey Hongzhuang arrived at the Central Plaza again, she realized that the number of people in the queue had not decreased at all compared to the morning. However, Di Beichun's figure had already appeared at the front of the line. It could be seen how great the influence of the recruitment convention was. It It was really shocking that it took such a long time just to receive the number plate. Chapter 2543. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly passed through the crowd and came to Di Beichen's side. Di Beichen's forehead was also sweating because of the heat. She took out a handkerchief from her bosom and helped Di Beichen wipe his sweat. She smiled and said, "Are you tired?" Di Beichen chuckled. "How can I be tired when I line up for my wife?" After saying that, Di Beichen walked out and let Bailey Hongzhuang stand at his seat. When the surrounding people saw that Di Beichen was so considerate towards Bailey Hongzhuang, their eyes were filled with envy. "Look at him! How can the one in our family compare to him? Comparisons are odious." Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen didn't think that their actions would cause so many people to resent their lover. They couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment. However, the smile in their eyes didn't disappear. "Wife, in a while, when you receive your number plate, you still need to go through a few basic tests before you can receive your number plate. This is also to prevent cheating." It was precisely because there was such a process that it took so long to line up. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang understood. The Yu clan had held so many recruitment meetings, and the process was very strict. There wasn't the slightest bit of mistake. "I understand. Then I'll go outside and wait for you." Di Beichen glanced at the surrounding situation. There were a total of 2 rows in the queue. Everyone was lining up by themselves. Him and Bailey Hongzhuang, standing in the same row, had undoubtedly aroused the suspicions and dissatisfaction of many people at the back. "Okay, I'll look for you when I'm done," Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. Di Beichen nodded and walked towards the back of the queue. With Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills, passing this test was definitely not a problem. Not long after Di Beichen left, a disdainful voice suddenly sounded. "One look, and I can tell that you're not the real deal. You're still showing off your love in a place like this. What a joke." Hearing this voice, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that it was a woman on the left who was looking at her with disdain. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. The others didn't have any objections, but she didn't expect such a fellow to appear. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not care about her thoughts. After all, she didn't even know who the other party was and didn't intend to have too much interaction with these people. The woman saw that Bailey Hongzhuang only glanced at her indifferently and didn't say anything. She felt a little proud and immediately began to preach again. "In the future, don't do such things to please the crowd. When you fail, go and cry to your husband." The woman smiled proudly and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang as if she was looking at a failure. "Ji Lishue, there are a lot of people who came to participate in the recruitment this year. Many Tom, Dick, and Harry came, thinking that they could pass the test with their mediocre medical skills. Why bother with these people?" At this moment, the other man behind the woman, Di Tian-song, also spoke slowly. Hearing this, Ji Lishue chuckled. "That's true. Even if there are more people in the recruitment this year, the competition is still not small. Many people thought that the Yu clan was a shelter, so they came to try. They didn't know that it was a complete joke." Chapter 2544. Bailey Hongzhuang, who had originally intended to ignore them, saw that the 2 people were getting more and more out of hand, and her expression changed a bit. "What does it have to do with you if I want to play to the gallery? Others don't talk as much as you." Bailey Hongzhuang opened her mouth and went straight to the other side. Since the other side liked to take the initiative to find trouble, she wasn't a person afraid of trouble. She was originally in a good mood today, but these 2 disgusting fellows just had to ruin her mood. It really made her unhappy. Ji Lishue and Di Tian-song's expressions changed when they heard that. They didn't expect this ordinary-looking girl to provoke them. The people around them who were unhappy with Ji Lishue and Di Tian-song's words felt a little better when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang stand up. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't stood up, they wouldn't have been able to resist standing up. "Woman, how dare you talk back to me?" Ji Lishue looked coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. She could tell at a glance that this girl was from an ordinary family. How dare she talk back to her? Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. "I say, Aren't you feeling too good about yourself? Who do you think you are? Talk back? The other party wasn't her elder, so how could she talk back to her? I am Ji Lishua. Ji Lishua emphasized. Ji Lishua looked at Bailey Hongzhuang proudly after she said that, as if Bailey Hongzhuang would be afraid when she heard her name. However, Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged nonchalantly and said, "Never heard of you." Ji Lishua? Ji Lishua? She had never heard of her name. The girl was waiting to see Bailey Hongzhuang's frightened expression, but she didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to suddenly say such a thing. She couldn't help but feel embarrassed. However, many people's expressions changed when they heard Ji Lishua's name. Ji Lishua? That's the young miss of the Ji family, right? I heard that the young miss of the Ji family has always been interested in studying medicine. I didn't expect her to participate in this recruitment. I've also heard that the Ji clan isn't far from Yutian City. It's said that Ji Lishue received guidance from Grandmaster Yu Siqing in the past. Lishue has always wanted to become Grandmaster Yu Siqing's disciple. Ji Lishue's medical skills are very outstanding. Everyone said that she would definitely become Master Yu Siqing's disciple this time. I didn't expect it to be her. Ji Lishua's expression only improved a little when the people around her knew who she was. Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. However, from the discussion of the surrounding people, this Ji family wasn't a real aristocratic family. It was just a small family. This kind of identity, for Bailey Hongzhuang, was simply nothing in her eyes. Who was she? The young palace master of Limitless Palace. Just this identity alone was enough to throw Ji Lishue far behind. You, hurry up and apologize to me, and I might consider letting you off. Ji Lishue put her hands on her hips and looked down at Bailey Hongzhuang, waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to submit. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced coldly at Ji Lishue. She really didn't know how this girl developed the princess syndrome. If you shut your mouth now, I can still let you participate in this assessment. Otherwise, I'll make you cry. Do you believe me? Chapter 2545. Almost everyone present thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely apologize to Ji Lishue. After all, Ji Lishue's identity wasn't simple. If they offended Ji Lishue here, they definitely wouldn't have a good ending. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's answer stunned everyone present for a moment. She still dared to go against Ji Lishue at a time like this. Wasn't she just looking for trouble? This was too unwise. Moreover, judging from Bailey Hongzhuang's situation, she should be just an ordinary person. She didn't look like she had any background at all. Bailey Hongzhuang came here with a completely different image in front of others, so she bought the most ordinary clothes. In everyone's eyes, she was just an ordinary person. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ji Lishue was so angry that she laughed. Do I believe you? Of course I don't. One had to know that she, Ji Lishue, was a very famous person in this recruitment event. No matter who she said bad things about, they could only endure it. This guy who came out of nowhere dared to threaten her. He was simply courting death. Di Tiansong's eyes turned cold when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang being so stubborn. If you kneel down and apologize now, I can spare your life. Di Tiansong's voice was emotionless, as if it was a simple matter to take Bailey Hongzhuang's life. Everyone couldn't help but gasp when they heard Di Tiansong's words. They didn't expect Di Tiansong to be so ruthless. It was just a spat, but he wanted to take the other party's life. This was a little too cold-blooded. Master, it seems like we have to teach these two guys a lesson. Xiaohei's eyes flashed with a cold and fierce light. Master had originally planned to participate in this recruitment convention in a low-key manner, but there were always people who didn't have the foresight to ruin everything. Then I'll just take care of them. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression turned even colder. She hadn't seen such a blind person in a long time. In the distance, Di Beichun was waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to receive her number plate. However, when he saw that the situation in front of him was not right, his deep eyes could not help but be filled with a complicated light. Bang! The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground shocked everyone present. When everyone saw the scene in front of them clearly, The entire scene seemed to have frozen. Everyone stood there in a daze, wondering if they had seen wrongly. She saw that Di Beichon, who had left before, had appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and was stepping on Di Tiansong's chest. "What did you just say?" Di Beichon opened his mouth slowly. His light tone was filled with coldness and coldness. He was very angry. He had only been away from Hongzhuang for a short while, and someone actually dared to cause trouble for Hongzhuang. Moreover, it seemed that the cause of this matter was still him. Di Tiansong was completely unprepared. When he reacted, he felt as if he had been attacked by a flood or a ferocious beast and fell to the ground. The other party's foot was on his chest, making it impossible for him to breathe. However, that wasn't the only thing that shocked everyone. When Di Beichon stepped on Di Tiansong's chest, Bailey Hongzhuang's hand had already grabbed Ji Lishue's neck and faintly lifted her body off the ground. Chapter 2546. Ji Lishue stared at Bailey Hongzhuang with her eyes wide open. This scene was beyond her imagination. She didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to treat her like this after knowing her identity. Did Bailey Hongzhuang have a death wish? Everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichon. Their actions were really shocking. Where the hell did these two people come from? How dare they attack Miss Ji? Aren't they digging their own graves? I don't think so. These two are so powerful right from the start. I don't think they are ordinary people. We don't know who will win in the end. These two are so powerful. They must be cultivators. Everyone kept thinking. Generally speaking, doctors and alchemists were the same. They put all their energy into studying medical skills and were not interested in cultivation. However, it was obvious that Bailey Hongzhuang was not only a doctor, but also a cultivator. Otherwise, how could her strength be so amazing? Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichon restrained Di Tiansong and Di Beichon, their subordinates rushed up. Ji Lishue saw her subordinates rushing over and quickly said, "Kill! Kill them!" As soon as she said that, the thugs quickly rushed toward Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichon, and the doctors in the line around them also retreated. If they were implicated at this time, they would really want to cry, but have no tears. Bailey Hongzhuang loosened her right hand and threw Ji Lishue to the ground. Di Beichon also released his foot from Di Tiansong's chest. Bang! 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 The sound of fists and feet colliding rang out, followed by the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground. This development was completely beyond everyone's expectations. Ji Lishue and Di Tiansong were completely dumbfounded. In the blink of an eye, all the thugs had been dealt with by Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichon. At this moment, they were piled up like a human pyramid, like a pile of garbage. Bailey Hongzhuang clapped her hands, then turned around to look at Ji Lishue and Fengyu. Kowtow and apologize or die. Choose one. Ji Lishue and Di Tiansong's faces were pale. They felt like scholars meeting a soldier, unable to reason with him. Aren't all the people here doctors? How many doctors were there that were so valiant? Their subordinates weren't weak either. Normally, they could do whatever they wanted, but now they were dealt with in the blink of an eye. This kind of psychological difference was too unacceptable. At this moment, Ji Lishue was filled with regret and hatred. If she had known that Bailey Hongzhuang was such a difficult person to deal with, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to find trouble with her. She had originally planned to establish her prestige at this recruitment event. Previously, she had been very successful, but she did not expect to be slapped in the face. Now, almost everyone's attention in the central square was on them. This was really embarrassing. After today's incident, she was almost certain that they would become the butt of everyone's jokes. This time, she wanted to become Master Yu Siqing's disciple. If this matter spread to Master Yu Siqing's ears, wouldn't her image be greatly damaged? Thinking of this, Ji Lishue felt that things were really terrible. Chapter 2547. Bailey Hongzhuang was too lazy to talk nonsense with Ji Lishue. She had originally planned to keep a low profile and enter the U clan through the recruitment ceremony. Once she entered the U clan, it would be much easier for her to complete her task. During this period of time, although Ution City had been open to the public, the U clan security was much stricter than usual. Because the current Ution City was very complicated, there was no lack of people like Bailey Hongzhuang who harbored evil intentions. Therefore, the U clan was patrolling day and night. Anyone who got close to the U clan would be questioned or even warned. Therefore, it was very difficult for Bailey Hongzhuang to sneak into the U clan. She might as well go in openly, catching the U clan off guard. However, after such a commotion, everyone knew that she would become famous in Ution City after today. Bailey Hongzhuang would never dwell on such matters. Originally, she had planned to keep a low profile. Since she could no longer keep a low profile, she would pass with a high profile. As long as she could achieve her goal, it didn't matter what the process was. Seeing that Ji Lushui and Di Tianzong did not speak for a long time, and that it was Bailey Hongzhuang's turn to enter the queue, Di Beichun gently said to Bailey Hongzhuang, "Wifey, you go in and get your number. I will take care of the rest." Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. It was her turn now. She couldn't waste her time on these two insignificant fellows. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang directly walked into the house to get her number plate. Di Beichun looked at the two dumbstruck fellows in front of him and walked up to them. Following that, amidst the two exclamations, Di Beichun directly carried Ji Lushui and Di Tianzong to the back of the line. The two people's weight fell on Di Beichun's hands, but they were carried away as if they were weightless. The surrounding crowd stared blankly at this scene and couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Cultivators were indeed powerful. This kind of strength, doctors couldn't even fight back. After Bailey Hongzhuang entered the house, she was able to obtain her number plate very smoothly. The test was also very simple. It was only to identify medicinal herbs. As long as all the medicinal herbs were identified, one would be able to receive a number plate. Although this method was very simple, it was very effective. Only a doctor would know all of these medicinal herbs like the back of his hand and be able to differentiate them easily. After Bailey Hongzhuang obtained her identity card and walked out, she felt the gazes of all the doctors in the queue fall on her. Their expressions were filled with fear and curiosity. After all, it wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang who started this trouble, but Ji Lushui. However, after this incident, everyone knew that this seemingly ordinary woman in front of them was not someone to be trifled with. Moreover, this woman either had a powerful background or was fearless. Although the Ji clan strength couldn't be compared to the U clan, they were still quite famous in this area. Bailey Hongzhuang taught Ji Lushui a lesson as soon as she made move. With Ji Lushui's character, she definitely wouldn't let Bailey Hongzhuang off so easily. When that time came, there would be trouble. Under the complicated gazes of the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked out. When she saw Di Beichun again, she saw that Di Tianzong had already been beaten into a pig's head. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. At this moment, he was looking at Di Beichun with tears in his eyes and kept saying that he wouldn't dare to do it again. Chapter 2548. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw this scene, she couldn't help but smile. She didn't expect Di Beichun to be so interesting when he was teaching people a lesson. Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile and gave her a look, silently asking if she was satisfied with this result. If someone provoked Bailey Hongzhuang on a normal day, Di Beichun would definitely kill them without hesitation. However, they were in Ution City now, and these two people had a certain background. If they were killed, the other party's forces would definitely come to cause trouble for them. In this way, it would be very troublesome for them to pass the recruitment ceremony. After all, it wasn't good to complicate matters. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood the meaning of Di Beichun's actions. In fact, she didn't care about these two people at all. She just wanted to teach them a lesson and stop causing trouble for them. Of course, The premise was that these two people were tactful enough to stop causing trouble for them. When Di Tianzong and Ji Lishue saw Bailey Hongzhuang, a trace of fear appeared in their eyes. They had been taught a lesson by Di Beichun just now, but they didn't know how Bailey Hongzhuang planned to deal with them. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at them indifferently and said, "Do you still dare to cause trouble for me in the future?" As soon as the words came out, Di Tianzong and Ji Lishue shook their heads like a rattle drum. Today's matter, they had already suffered a big loss. If they want to find trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, the two of them would be seeking their own deaths. Moreover, although their families had a certain amount of influence in this area, they didn't bring many people this time, so it wasn't considered revenge. Most importantly, they just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. The surrounding mocking gazes made them want to find a hole to hide in. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other and walked toward the restaurant together. Di Tianzong and Ji Lishue heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Ji Lishue leave. They didn't want to kill them. Di Tianzong and Ji Lishue didn't have the face to stay here any longer, so they quickly went to the restaurant they were staying in. Although receiving a number plate was very important, at the very least, they didn't have the courage to stay in front of so many people. When Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the restaurant, it was still very quiet. The others were obviously still in the central square. "Wife, what number did you receive?" Di Beichun smiled warmly. Although something had just happened, it didn't ruin their mood. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Her smile was filled with emotion. "Number 169, there's really a lot of people lining up. Based on this situation, I'm afraid there will be as many as 500 people participating in the recruitment ceremony today." Such a number was really shocking. In the Shangxian continent, cultivators made up the majority of the population, while doctors and poison masters were relatively few. For there to be 500 doctors and poison masters participating in the recruitment ceremony, it could be assumed that all those with good medical and poison skills were here. Hearing this, Di Beichun nodded. The number was even more than they had imagined. Chapter 2549. There are more doctors and poison masters participating in the preliminary round, but I believe that there will be fewer people entering the finals. Di Beichun's deep eyes were filled with wisdom. This time, all the poison masters and doctors know that the Yu family will recruit more people than usual, so almost everyone with some ability has come. However, even if the Yu family is in urgent need of manpower, they will not recruit people casually. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. It seems that the preliminary round will take a few days. According to her understanding, the recruitment event's preliminary round was originally going to be held today. However, when Yu Clan's people saw that there were actually so many people receiving their tokens today, they decided to set today as the day to receive their tokens. The real preliminary round would only be held tomorrow. This was what she heard when she received her queue number. From the looks of it, she might not even be able to get her turn as number 169 tomorrow. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry. The recruitment event would end in 10 days at most. She just had to wait here. "Master, if we let those two guys go just like that, will they not know what's good for them and come looking for trouble again?" Xiao He frowned slightly. Just by looking at Ji Lishue and Di Beichun's appearance, she knew that they were arrogant and domineering people. Now that they had been bullied like this, they would not let it go. If it were not for the fact that everyone was watching, Di Beichun would have already taken their lives. It could only be said that the two of them were lucky. However, if they took advantage of the night to kill the two of them, it would be easy. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and said, "Ji Lishue and Di Beichun only have a certain amount of power around here. However, no matter what power they have, they only value cultivators. As for doctors, although they pay attention to them, I can be sure that Ji Lishue's status in the Ji family is definitely not high. Now that such a thing has happened, Ji Lishue has embarrassed the entire Ji family. I believe that she is not willing to spread this matter back to the family. I'm afraid that she won't dare to cause trouble directly." Di Beichun's lips curled into a confident smile. Just from Di Tianzong and Ji Lishue's previous performance, he was certain that his judgment was not wrong. Even if they want to cause trouble, they will at most cause some trouble during the competition. They won't be able to cause any waves. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. She was determined to win the recruitment assembly this time. Moreover, with her medical and poison skills, it wouldn't be difficult for her to successfully enter the Yu clan. On the contrary, if Di Tiansong and Ji Lishua died today, everyone would suspect them. Perhaps if the two of them were wronged, the family members would not step forward. However, if the two of them died, things would become much more troublesome. Moreover, this Ji clan was originally a clan near the Yu clan, so they must have had some dealings with the Yu clan. Once things had developed to this point, it would not be easy for Bailey Hongzhuang to enter the Yu clan again. The three beasts nodded after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's words. Since they had already made a decision, they would not have any objections. After today's incident, Bailey Hongzhuang's mood was not affected at all. On the contrary, it was very good. Chapter 2550. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen caused such a ruckus today, their reputation quickly spread throughout Yutian City. Everyone knew that a couple had taught Ji Lishue and Di Tiansong a lesson in front of everyone, two people that no one dared to provoke normally. Moreover, these two people were very powerful. They took care of all the thugs in the blink of an eye. In the end, Ji Lishue and Di Tiansong could only leave with their tails between their legs. For a moment, everyone was talking about Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang. However, these two people had kept a low profile and weren't familiar with anyone, so no one even knew their names. However, in the blink of an eye, everyone had already regarded Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen as people that they couldn't afford to provoke. Even someone like Ji Lishue had suffered a loss at their hands. If anyone else dared to provoke them, they would really be courting death. Many people were inquiring about Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Tiansong's true identity, but they didn't get a definite answer in the end. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen came to the restaurant's main hall to eat, they found that the originally bustling restaurant instantly quieted down. Everyone lowered their heads and ate quietly, but they couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Tiansong from the corner of their eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but look at each other. It seemed that their actions today were indeed very sensational. The two originally planned to eat in the restaurant's main hall, but after seeing this scene, they gave up on the idea and directly ordered the food back to their rooms. If they continued to eat in the restaurant's main hall, they were afraid that everyone around them would feel uncomfortable eating. The three beasts were very satisfied with this result. This way they could eat their fill. Ji Lishue and Di Tiansong were extremely depressed. Originally, they were very imposing in Yutian City, but today they had become a joke. First, they were taught a lesson by Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Tiansong. Then, they had to queue up again to get their number plates. It was really sad. After the two of them returned to the restaurant, they didn't come out because it was too embarrassing. Even though he was standing by the window, he could still hear the discussions of the pedestrians downstairs. Tiansong, what is the background of those two? How dare they treat us like this? When I think about the upcoming competition, I feel that I don't have the face to appear in front of others. Ji Lishue couldn't hide her embarrassment. She had never been so embarrassed in her entire life. This time, the whole family had high hopes for her when she came to participate in the recruitment. In their eyes, her success was inevitable. This should have been a glorious matter, but because of today's matter, there was a stain. If Master Yu Siqing knew about this matter, how would she feel? Thinking of this, Ji Lishue was furious. Di Tiansong shook his head and frowned. I've already sent people to inquire about them, but no one knows where they came from. Even their names have yet to be found. I think these two people should be doctors from other places. They don't have any background. Di Tiansong was also very helpless. Today's matter really made him lose face. Hearing Di Tiansong's words, Ji Lishue's face was full of disbelief. Chapter 2551. Logically speaking, if these two people did not have any background, they would not have the guts to confront them head-on. Therefore, Ji Lishue did not believe Di Tiansong's words at all. Di Tiansong shrugged. In fact, he also found this answer hard to believe. Perhaps their background was not simple, but they had not found out yet. Lishue, in my opinion, we shouldn't make an enemy out of them. If they really have a background, I'm afraid we'll be at a disadvantage if we look for trouble again. Di Tiansong's face was full of worry. He really could not figure out the real identity of these two people. The reason for that was because the aura emitted by his opponent was simply too domineering. Even if they did not have any background, their strength was not to be underestimated. If they looked for trouble again, they would probably lose their lives before they could deal with the other party. After all, some desperados were very terrifying once they went crazy. Di Tiansong had seen such people before. As the saying went, those who were barefooted were not afraid of those who were wearing shoes. Both of them still had a bright future ahead of them. There was no need to put themselves in danger because of this matter. Ji Lishue nodded after hearing Di Tiansong's words. Although today's matter had made them lose face, at least they were safe and sound. From Di Beichen's behavior, it was fortunate that they did not do anything to Bailey Hongzhuang. Otherwise, Di Beichen would have killed them directly. Just recalling Di Beichen's eyes was enough to make her feel terrified. She really did not want to have any dealings with them. You're right. Let's leave it at that. I believe that after we show our strength in the competition, everyone will forget about what happened before. As a member of the family, Ji Lishue understood this very well since she was young. Everyone liked to watch a good show, but when something new happened, everyone's attention would be quickly diverted. She believed that even if this matter caused a sensation, it would not affect them for too long. The next day, the long-awaited preliminary round of the recruitment meet finally began. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also got up early and headed to the central square. Up until now, they still didn't have any understanding of how the preliminaries worked. It was said that every time the recruitment assembly was held, the competition method would be different. And this time, the recruitment assembly was especially important to the Yu clan. Presumably, the competition method would also be unique. As Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked through the crowd, numerous gazes fell upon them. These two are still alive. Looks like Ji Lishue and the others didn't take their revenge yesterday. That should be the case. However, the strength of these two people is not simple. I think they must be very powerful experts. That's right. Did you see their fight with your own eyes yesterday? In just a blink of an eye, he took care of so many thugs. His strength is really amazing. Since you're already an expert, why did you participate in the recruitment meet? Could it be that all the experts have started to practice medicine? The crowd discussed animatedly, some of them unable to understand. One must know that there were very few doctors among the cultivators. What's more, these two people were true experts, and they even became doctors. This was even more strange. Chapter 2552. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen arrived at the central square, they found that the Yu clan had already set up the high platform in the central square. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang saw the rows of seats that appeared on the high platform, her eyes could not help but flash with a touch of doubt. There were hundreds of seats on the high platform. At first glance, it was very shocking. Could it be that the preliminary round is a test? Bailey Hongzhuang's dark eyes flashed with surprise. Previously, she had thought of many ways to compete, but such a test was really beyond her expectations. There were many competitions in the Saint Continent, but a test like this was only used during the imperial examination. However, after thinking about it carefully, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that the Yu clan's method of competition was very good. This way, they could solve the problem of having too many participants and save a lot of time. Looking at the situation, the Yu clan is preparing to let everyone participate in today's preliminary round. Di Beichen said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze swept across the high platform. Although many people from the Yu clan appeared here, she did not see Yu Xiqing. Not only that, she also did not see Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan. It seemed that Yu Xiqing was still treating Lan Qingyan. Yu Xiqing would not appear until the final round. After Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, she found that there were two gazes in the crowd on her. She swept her gaze across them. Who else could it be other than Ji Lishue and Di Beichen? Ji Lishue and Di Tianzong did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction to be so fast. They only took a glance, and Bailey Hongzhuang had already discovered their existence. Seeing this, the two of them could not help but rejoice in their hearts. From this point, they could see that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was astonishing. Fortunately, they did not act rashly yesterday. Otherwise, the outcome would be unpredictable. The two of them immediately lowered their heads, not daring to look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen again. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen naturally noticed the changes in Ji Lishue and Di Beichen, and the corners of their lips slowly widened. It seemed that their judgment was not wrong. Ji Lishue and Di Beichen did not dare to find trouble with them again. Lishue, so you're here. Just as Ji Lishue was wondering if Bailey Hongzhuang continued to pay attention to her, a slightly happy voice entered her ears. Hearing this, Ji Lishue could not help but raise her head to look at the person behind her. In front of her was a man in a yellow brocade robe. He was about 23 years old and had a dignified appearance. At this moment, he was looking at Ji Lishue with a smile. After Di Tianzong saw the man, his expression couldn't help but change a little. Then a thick smile appeared on his face, vaguely revealing a hint of flattery. You. Seventh. You. Was you. Although Di Tianzong thought that his identity was not bad, in front of Yurueline, he was nothing. As the seventh young master of the Yu clan, Yurueline's medical skills were also very good. Not only that, Yurueline was also interested in Ji Lishue. Di Tianzong also wanted to pursue Ji Lishue, but after knowing Yurueline's plan, he gave up the idea. Chapter 2553. Yurueline nodded at Di Tianzong, but his expression was filled with disdain. He had known Di Tianzong for some time, so he was very clear about Di Tianzong's previous thoughts. However, Di Tianzong had wisely chosen to give up after Yurueline had expressed his thoughts. Although it was a smart choice, Yurueline still looked down on Di Tianzong. After all, as a man, it was too cowardly to give up the woman he liked so easily. When Ji Lishue saw Yurueline again, she was stunned at first, but then she bowed to Yurueline. Young Master Yu. Lishue, since you came to Yutian City, why didn't you contact me earlier? I can arrange for you to stay in the Yu clan directly. You don't have to stay in a restaurant. Yurueline was full of smiles, and he did not hide his intentions when he looked at Ji Lishue. Ji Lishue smiled, but her smile was filled with helplessness. Young Master Yu is too polite. I haven't passed the recruitment ceremony yet, so it's not appropriate for me to stay in the Yu clan. It's easy for you to enter the Yu clan, so why do you have to pass the recruitment ceremony? As long as you marry me, none of this will be a problem. Ji Lishue's expression changed when she heard this, and she subconsciously looked at Di Tianzong. She already knew Yurueline's thoughts, but she did not like him. As far as she knew, although Yurueline's medical skills were not bad, he was also a bully. Although they were not officially married, he already had many maids serving him. She really did not want to have anything to do with Yurueline. Moreover, the person she liked since she was young was Di Tianzong. However, Di Tianzong turned a blind eye to Ji Lishue's gaze, and he was still full of smiles. Lishue, young Master Yu is right. Why do you have to work so hard? Ji Lishue's expression turned ugly when she heard Di Tianzong's words. At this time, not only did Di Tianzong not help her out, but he also agreed with Yurueline. This made her very sad. In fact, she had always felt this. In the past, Di Tianzong clearly liked her, but ever since Yurueline appeared, Di Tianzong began to avoid her. She had wanted to ask Di Tianzong, but as a woman, how could she express her feelings so clearly? It was because of this that when she saw how well Di Beichen treated Bailey Hongzhuang, she could not help but feel jealous. That was why she had mocked Bailey Hongzhuang. However, in her heart, she knew very well that her words were completely out of envy and jealousy. Lu Shui understands young Master Yu's good intentions, but I just want to pass the recruitment. Ji Leshua's expression was calm, but her eyes were filled with disappointment. At this point, there was no point in saying anything more. From Di Tiansong's behavior, it was clear that he had made up his mind. Ji Leshua stood alone on the other side with a cold expression. She clearly had no intention of continuing the conversation. Yurualin couldn't help but frown when he saw her like this. Although Ji Leshua was usually cold to him, it wasn't to this extent. What was going on today? Chapter 2554. Young Master Yu. There's a reason why Lu Shui is so unhappy. Di Tiansong said slowly. What's the reason? Yurualin raised his eyebrows. Could it be that something had happened? Lu Shui was wronged. Hearing Di Tiansong's words, Yurualin's eyes flashed with surprise. There are people in Yutian City who dare to offend Lu Shui. Yesterday, when Lu Shui was receiving her number plate, she had a conflict with a woman. Then, she was taught a lesson by the woman and her husband. She was greatly wronged. Therefore, Lu Shui was not in a good mood the whole day. Di Tiansong told Yurualin about what had happened yesterday, with exaggerated details. The other party's attitude was very arrogant. Young Master Yu, look at the wounds on my face. They were left behind by them. Yurualin glanced at Di Tiansong. Di Tiansong's face was indeed covered with many scars. Yurualin found his bruised and swollen face very interesting and wanted to ridicule him. He did not expect that Lu Shui was also bullied in Yutian City. Who are they? How dare they? Yurualin's face was full of displeasure. Ji Lu Shui was the woman he liked. The other party dared to attack his woman in his territory. It was simply outrageous. After seeing the anger on Yurualin's face, Di Tiansong felt a burst of joy in his heart. When he thought about what had happened yesterday, he felt extremely angry. However, with his strength, it was not easy to deal with those two people, so he could only swallow his anger. Now that Yurualin had come to stand up for him, it was undoubtedly the best. Just thinking about using someone else's knife to kill someone made him happy. He had liked Ji Lu Shui for so many years, but because of Yurualin, he had to give up. Now, since the opportunity was in front of him, it was not in line with his character not to take advantage of it. I don't know who they are either. I only know that they live in a restaurant nearby and are now among the crowd waiting to participate in the preliminary round of the recruitment meet. When these words came out, Yurualin's eyes became sharper. They dared to touch the woman he liked and wanted to participate in the recruitment meet. It was not so easy. Under Di Tiansong's guidance, Yurualin quickly found Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang in the crowd. Is it the two of them? Yes, young Master Yu. You must avenge Lu Shui. Di Tiansong was indignant. You can leave this to me. Yurualin patted his chest, was confident, but his eyes looked at Di Tiansong's contempt masters was disdainful. Yurualin's now was despised. Master Yu was, he couldn't. On the contrary, he now had to rely on him to solve the problem. It was really embarrassing. He believed that as long as he avenged Ji Leshua, Ji Leshua would definitely look at him in a new light. After all, he was the man who could protect Ji Leshua. Di Tiansong was just a good-for-nothing. Di Tiansong looked at Yurualin's constantly changing expression and knew that Yurualin had made up his mind to teach Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen a lesson. He was very pleased. Chapter 2555. Ji Leshua stood alone at the side, watching Di Tiansong and Yurualin whispering to each other. She couldn't help but frown, not knowing what they were talking about. However, Ji Leshua was in a very bad mood, so she wasn't in the mood to think about it. She felt that her previous thoughts were too extravagant. Judging from Di Tiansong's current attitude, she knew that he had completely given up. Facing such a Di Tiansong, Ji Leshua also had mixed feelings. Perhaps she should have given up long ago. Yurualin slowly walked in front of Ji Leshua, a concerned smile on his handsome face. Leshua, don't worry. I will definitely help you get revenge for the grievances you suffered. Ji Lishue couldn't help but be startled. She didn't expect Yurueline to suddenly say such words to her. Without waiting for Ji Lishue's reply, Yurueline's figure had already disappeared in front of Ji Lishue. It was as if he was full of confidence as he went to find Bailey Hongzhuang for revenge. Only then did Ji Lishue react. She hurriedly looked at Di Tiansong and said, "Tiansong, did you tell young master you what happened yesterday?" Di Tiansong nodded and said yes. "Didn't you say that yesterday's matter was over? Now you want young master you to find trouble with them. If their background is really not simple, what should we do?" Ji Lishue's face was full of confusion. She had already talked with Di Tiansong last night, and they had both made a decision. Why did Di Tiansong tell young master you about this matter now? Right now, she didn't want to connect yesterday's matter at all. She just wanted to let it go. However, Di Tiansong did indeed look indifferent. "Lishue, with our abilities, it will naturally be difficult for us to deal with them. But young master Yu is different. He is the 7th young master of the Yu clan. Wouldn't it be easy for him to deal with them? This is the Yu clan's territory, and they want to enter the Yu clan. It is undoubtedly best for us to deal with them." Di Tiansong's eyes flashed with a fierce and sinister light. He had lost face in front of everyone yesterday, and today he must get it back from Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang. Ji Lishue couldn't help frowning when she saw Di Tiansong acting like this. She understood that Di Tiansong wanted to use his power to bully others. Although this kind of revenge could let them vent their resentment, it was not relying on their own strength, but on someone else. It made her feel a little uncomfortable. She felt that the Di Tiansong in front of her was no longer the person she was familiar with, because the things he did were beyond her expectations again and again. "I think it's better not to complicate this matter any further." With that, Ji Lishue prepared to stop Yurueline. Right now, she didn't want to care about any of this at all. She just wanted to quietly participate in this preliminary round. What happened yesterday was already very embarrassing. If Yurueline went to deal with this matter today, it would undoubtedly remind everyone of what happened yesterday, and the impact would be even greater. Moreover, if Master Yu Siqing knew about this matter, he would probably think that she had asked Yurueline to stand up for her. It would be terrible if his impression of her was affected. This was what Ji Lishue cared about the most. Chapter 2556. Ji Lishue glanced at Di Tiansong with disappointment in her eyes. "I'm not happy about what happened yesterday, but I don't want Yurueline to avenge me." She didn't like Yurueline, so she didn't want to owe him anything. Once you owed him something, you had to pay him back. However, Di Tiansong still didn't let go. Things have already come to this. Even if you stop Yurueline, he won't let it go. "I don't need you to meddle in my business." Ji Lishue waved Di Tiansong's hand away, the disappointment in her eyes reaching its peak. She felt that Di Tiansong didn't do it for her sake. He said that he did it for his own selfish reasons. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were waiting in the crowd for the preliminaries to begin. Suddenly, a group of people walked toward them aggressively. They were coming from the direction of the two. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. It seemed that they had made a mistake, and the other party had come to cause trouble. It seemed that this person was the helper that the other party had found. Di Beichun's deep eyes flashed coldly. He had given the other party a chance yesterday, but he didn't expect that they would dare to cause trouble today. Since that was the case, he could only deal with them together. Yurueline swaggered in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. He could tell at a glance that these two were just ordinary people. Di Tiansong was a good-for-nothing, so it wasn't strange that they had beaten him into a pig's head. However, they couldn't touch Ji Lishue. "Were you two the ones who bullied Lishue yesterday?" Yurueline stood in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. He crossed his arms and looked down at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. "Do you know that Lishue is my woman? You must have eaten a leopard's guts to bully her." Yurueline immediately declared his sovereignty. In his opinion, even if Ji Lishue hadn't agreed to him yet, Ji Lishue would be his woman sooner or later. From the moment he took a fancy to Ji Lishue couldn't run away. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichen looked at each other. It seemed that Ji Lishue had found her man. Who are you? Deep Beichen glanced at Yu Ruilin lazily. He had to at least know the other party's identity before he dealt with him. Seeing that the other party didn't know his identity, Yu Ruilin didn't feel strange. If the other party had known his identity, he would have kowtowed and begged for mercy. I am a Yu clan's 7th young master. Now you should know who you have offended. As soon as he said this, the viciousness in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes deepened. If the other party was someone else, she might not care so much. However, the other party was a member of the Yu clan, so he was one of her enemies. It seemed that the relationship between her and the Yu clan was not small. She hadn't taken the initiative to find trouble with the Yu clan, but the Yu clan had already come to find her. What 7th young master of the Yu clan? As long as they came to die, she wouldn't refuse them. Chapter 2557. However, the situation that Yu Ruilin expected did not happen. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichen looked at Yu Ruilin indifferently, as if his identity did not intimidate them at all. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichen's attitude, Yu Ruilin could no longer maintain his arrogance. Why didn't these two act according to common sense? When the surrounding people saw Yu Ruilin, their expressions changed. Their eyes were filled with fear and dread. The Yu clan's 7th young master has come to stand up for Ji Lishue. I'm afraid that these two are going to be in trouble. I heard that the Yu clan's 7th young master has already taken a fancy to Ji Lishue, but Ji Lishue doesn't seem to like him. Looking at the current situation, it's impossible for these two to enter the Yu clan through the recruitment assembly. For a moment, everyone could not help but sympathize with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Speaking of which, this matter was completely instigated by Ji Lishue and Di Beichen. It was just that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's reaction was a little unexpected. They thought that Ji Lishue and Di Beichen did not intend to take revenge, but now it seemed that this revenge was more serious than they thought. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. It seemed that the situation was a little out of their expectations. If the other party forced them to take their lives, then they could only find another way to enter the Yu clan. After all, this was not the only way to enter the Yu clan. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were about to take action, Ji Lishue hurriedly walked to Yu Ruilin's side. Lishue, you're here. When Yu Ruilin saw that Ji Lishue had arrived, a deep smile appeared on his handsome face. The two of them are the ones who bullied you yesterday, right? Tell me, how do you want to deal with them? I'll definitely avenge you. Yu Ruilin said confidently. In the Yu clan's territory, if he wanted to deal with these two people, it was undoubtedly a simple matter. In his opinion, this was simply a heaven-sent opportunity for him to perform. When Ji Lishue saw Bailey Hongzhuang, her expression was filled with guilt and embarrassment. If possible, she really didn't want to see Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Yiqian ever again. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichen looked at Ji Lishue calmly. They want to know how Ji Lishue was going to deal with them. However, Ji Lishue's performance once again exceeded everyone's expectations. Young Master Yu, thank you for your kind intentions. However, this matter has already been settled. I hope that you will not be entangled in this matter. Ji Lishue's attitude was very clear. She would rather suffer a loss than continue to blow this matter up. Most importantly, she was unwilling to accept Yu Ruilin's kindness. Hearing Ji Lishue's words, Yu Ruilin's expression changed slightly as a trace of doubt appeared in his eyes. Lishue, you don't have to be afraid. With me here, no one can bully you. Ji Lishue shook her head stubbornly. I didn't suffer any grievances. I hope, young master, you won't take this matter to heart. Master, what's the situation with Ji Lishue now? She actually took the initiative to stand up and reject. Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with doubt. This didn't match Ji Lishue's character yesterday. I don't know what's going on either. I'm afraid there's some other reason behind this. Bailey Hongzhuang said telepathically. However, since the situation had changed, she didn't mind continuing to watch. Chapter 2558. I heard from Tianzong that you're in a bad mood because these people bullied you. Yuruelin frowned as anxiety appeared on his face. He didn't understand why Ji Lishue would say such a thing. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally understood after hearing Yuruelin's words. It turned out that Ji Lishue wasn't the one who started it, but Di Tianzong. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. It seemed that Di Tianzong wanted to use someone else to do his dirty work. If Ji Lishue hadn't stopped them, they would have blamed everything on Ji Lishue and Yuruelin. I didn't think that Di Tianzong was such a despicable person. Xiao Bai's eyes flashed with disgust. They hated Ji Lishue the most after yesterday's incident and didn't feel much about Di Tianzong's group. However, judging from the current situation, Di Tianzong was even more despicable than Ji Lishue. Ji Lishue also felt uncomfortable as everyone looked at her in confusion. She immediately explained, "Young master, it's not like that. I'm not in a bad mood, and it's not because of them. The preliminaries are about to begin, and I'm just a little nervous." Yuruelin didn't know what to say when he saw how determined Ji Lishue was. He only glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Bai. Judging from his situation, he could only give up on revenge. "Young master, let's go back first." Ji Lishue didn't want to stay here any longer. She immediately grabbed Yuruelin's arm and wanted to leave. Yuruelin didn't want to give up, but the moment Ji Lishue grabbed his arm, that thought disappeared from his mind. Ever since he had met Ji Lishue, she had never been so close to him. No matter what, it was worth it. After Ji Lishue, Yuruelin, and the others left, the surroundings quieted down again. Bailey Hongzhuang looked in the direction Ji Lishue and the others left. Her gaze changed slightly. She felt that Ji Lishue looked very different today. Yesterday, Ji Lishue had been spoiled and domineering, but today, she seemed to have suffered a great grievance. It was really interesting. "Master, I don't think it's that simple. Why don't I follow them and take a look?" Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with excitement. It was very interested in such things. Most importantly, it wanted to know how Di Tianzong would react when he saw this scene being stopped. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, "Go." After receiving Bailey Hongzhuang's approval, Xiao Hei immediately followed after Ji Lishue. Thinking about it, Yuruelin would definitely ask Ji Lishue the real reason later. Then it would be able to know the ins and outs of this matter. This is really interesting. In comparison, Ji Lishue's attitude is rather unfathomable. Di Beichen's expression was calm. Even if something like that had just happened, it did not affect him at all. It was just that the situation was rather interesting. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged. "Xiao Hei will report to us in a while." With Xiao Hei's size, no one would be able to discover it after it had shrunk. Chapter 2559. Di Tianzong's face darkened when he saw that Ji Lishue had stopped Yuruelin from taking revenge. Ji Lishue's actions had put him in an awkward position. Yuruelin would definitely ask him what was going on, and it might even cause Yuruelin's displeasure. Di Tianzong was extremely depressed when he thought of this. Such a good opportunity had been ruined just like that. "Lishue, are you really not unhappy because of them?" Yuruelin asked Ji Lishue. He had a feeling that things were not so simple. Moreover, when he went to look for trouble, he had heard the discussions around him. There must have been a conflict between Ji Lishue and the two people yesterday. Ji Lishue shook her head. She knew Yuruelin's character. If she said yes, then Yuruelin would definitely not give up looking for trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other person. When she saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other person just now, the fear she felt was even more obvious. She felt that these two people were definitely not ordinary people, and it was better not to offend them. Moreover, yesterday's matter had already been laughed at, so why bring it up again now? "Young master, I'm really fine. I just want to participate in this recruitment assembly properly and enter the Yu clan legitimately. I hope you can help me." Ji Lishue stared at Yuruelin. Although she did not have a good impression of Yuruelin, she was still grateful that Yuruelin was willing to stand up for her just now. Hearing Ji Lishue's words, Yuruelin nodded and said, "I understand. Lishue, don't worry. With your medical skills, you definitely won't have a problem passing the recruitment assembly. A smile appeared on Ji Lishue's face. Thank you, young master Yu. I'll go and prepare now. The preliminaries are about to begin. Okay, I'll see you after your competition. After Ji Lishua left, Yurilin went to look for Di Tiansong. He was very unhappy that Di Tiansong dared to lie to him about this matter. When Di Tiansong saw Yurilin walking towards him with an unfriendly expression, his heart sank. Without waiting for Yurilin to ask him, he took the initiative to explain. Young master Yu, I'm telling the truth. However, Yurilin looked at Di Tiansong coldly. Nonsense. Le Shui doesn't care about this at all. Young master Yu, I guarantee that I am speaking the truth. Lu Shui was just afraid of those two people, so she didn't want to get into trouble. Think about it. Today is the Yu Clan's exhibition conference. If you attack the people who are participating in the recruitment conference, wouldn't that damage your reputation? I think Le Shui must have compromised because of this. If you don't believe me, you can ask around. Everyone knows what happened yesterday. Hearing Di Tiansong's explanation, Yurilin's expression became better. After all, as the 7th young master of the Yu clan, if he came back without doing anything after going to look for Yu Yang in such an aggressive manner, it would really damage his reputation. However, if Ji Leshua was doing this for his sake, then everything would be different. That better be the case. If you lie to me, you should know the consequences. Yurilin spat out these words and turned to leave. He wanted to investigate this matter himself. Chapter 2560. With Yurilin's departure, Di Tiansong looked at Ji Leshue in the distance with a hint of annoyance. This was supposed to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone, but Ji Leshue had ruined it, and now he was the one who had gotten himself into trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen already knew that he was the one behind it, and Yurilin was suspicious and dissatisfied with him. He had originally planned to push all the blame to Yurilin and Ji Leshue and stay out of it, but he didn't expect that all the trouble would come to him. Thinking of this, Di Tiansong didn't dare to look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. He only hoped that they wouldn't be angry because of this. Ji Leshue had Yurilin's support in the Yu clan's territory, but Di Tiansong had nothing. After understanding the situation with Di Tiansong, Xiaohe didn't immediately report to Bailey Hongzhuang, but followed behind Ji Leshue. It felt that Ji Leshue still had a lot of stories. Since it was already here, it naturally had to figure out everything before reporting back. After thinking about it, Di Tiansong still went to find Ji Leshue. He really didn't understand why Ji Leshue wanted to ruin his show and put him in such an awkward situation. Leshue, what did you mean by doing that? Di Tiansong looked at Ji Leshue with an angry face. He didn't understand why Ji Leshue put him in such a situation. Ji Leshue's mood was already very bad, and now that Di Tiansong actually came to criticize her, the anger in her heart was self-evident. You still have a nerve to ask me what I mean? I want to ask you what you mean. What do I mean? Di Tiansong frowned. What can I mean? Don't I want to take revenge for you? Take revenge for me? Ji Leshue sneered, and the coldness in her eyes gradually condensed into ice. I think you want to take revenge for yourself? I don't need you to think for me. Seeing Ji Leshue's attitude, Di Tiansong's face instantly darkened. Yesterday's conflict was caused by you. Now that someone can take revenge for you, you're still not happy? Instead, you're blaming everything on me. What's wrong with you? I'm fine. Ji Leshue's voice was filled with anger. She felt aggrieved about what had happened yesterday, but she had never thought of asking Yurilin to avenge her. Di Tiansong, you know that I don't want to have anything to do with Yurilin, but you still ask Yurilin to do these things for me. You know what you are thinking. I admit that I've always liked you, but now you're giving me to someone else? Aren't you being a little too simple-minded? Who I, Ji Leshue, marry in the future is not something you can decide. In the future, you'd better not appear in front of me again. Let's just pretend that we've never met. Ji Leshue didn't even want to look at Di Tiansong after saying that. She turned around and walked toward the entrance of the preliminaries. After today's incident, she finally saw through Di Tiansong. In fact, ever since Yurueline appeared, she had gradually discovered that Di Tianzong was gradually becoming different from the person she liked. It was just that she was unwilling to admit it. Now that everything was laid out in front of her, she could no longer deceive herself. Chapter 2561. Di Tianzong stared blankly at Ji Lushue's departing figure. He did not expect Ji Lushue to suddenly say something like that. However, the disgust and determination in Ji Lishue's words made him feel a stab of pain in his heart. He could feel the deep disappointment, and when Ji Lishue admitted that she had been in love with him all these years, he was shocked. However, Di Tianzong quickly regained his composure. He did like Ji Lishue, but what was the use? From the moment Yurueline fell in love with Ji Lishue, everything was meaningless. He could not compete with Yurueline at all, so he might as well use this to please Yurueline, and he would have a better future. Xiao Hei's eyes widened. The scene in front of it was really beyond its expectations. It did not expect to see such an emotional drama after following it here. However, Di Tianzong was too much of a jerk. Because of the other party's power, he even gave up the woman he liked. Was he still a man? Soon, Xiao Hei told Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen everything it knew. After knowing all this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also understood. No wonder she was so angry when she saw us being lovey-dovey yesterday. It turns out that she was jealous. Di Beichen raised his eyebrows and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a faint smile. His devilishly handsome appearance exuded a fatal temptation. Bailey Hongzhuang understood Di Beichen's thoughts just by looking at his eyes. The corners of her lips could not help but curl up. She did not expect that their public display of affection would provoke someone. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others understood why Ji Lishue was so angry. In comparison, it was understandable. I feel a little sorry for Ji Lishue now. Di Tianzong is obviously not responsible at all. He is not as reliable as Yurueline. Her beautiful eyes showed a touch of coldness. From Bailey Hongzhuang's point of view, Yurueline was definitely more reliable than Di Tianzong. At least, Yurueline dared to stand up for the woman he liked when she was bullied. However, Di Tianzong didn't even have the courage to stand up for himself. On the contrary, he wanted to use others to help him vent his anger. What a coward! After today's incident, Ji Lishue has seen Di Tianzong's true colors. She has jumped out of the fire pit. Di Beichen looked indifferent. He didn't care about other people's affairs, but he had to deal with Di Tianzong. Ji Lishue's judgment of people naturally can't compare to Master's. Baisher looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. Master and Di Beichen were a match made in heaven. Hearing Baisher's words, Di Beichen reached out and stroked Baisher's head. The smile in his eyes gradually deepened. Baisher is getting better and better at talking. Baisher raised his head proudly. Of course, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were laughing, a voice suddenly came from the high platform. The noisy central plaza instantly quietened down. Welcome everyone to Yu Tian City to participate in the Yu Clan's recruitment event. As soon as the words came out, a deafening applause came from below the high platform. Next, let us welcome the Yu Clan's clan leader, Yu Taotian, to host today's preliminaries. Chapter 2562. The Yu Clan's clan head wasn't someone that could be casually seen. Thus, everyone's gaze was focused on him. They wanted to see what kind of demeanor the illustrious Yu Clan head had. In their line of sight, they saw a man dressed in an ink-colored brocade robe, slowly walking up the stage, surrounded by a group of people. The man's figure was tall and straight, his back as straight as a spear. His eyes were bright and sharp. Even with just a glance, one could feel his terrifying aura and intimidating power. Only the gray hair at his temples made him seem more weathered. However, from his outstanding silhouette, one could vaguely see that he must have been a handsome man when he was young. However, just as everyone's attention was on the Yu Clan head, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was fixed on the figure on Yu Taotian's left. The man was about 40 years old. His figure was tall and sturdy. His handsome face wasn't as elegant as a youth's, but more mature and resolute. His pitch-black eyes were like a bottomless abyss, faintly revealing a sinister vibe like that of a venomous snake. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang saw the man, she could already tell that he was Lan Jingquang. As brothers, Lan Jingquang and Lan Yunxiao naturally had similarities. At the very least, they were both tall and handsome men. However, Lan Jingquang didn't have Lan Yunxiao's magnanimity and elegance. Instead, he had a malicious and deep aura. Bailey Hongzhuang finally met this uncle who had killed his own people and caused her entire family to be in such a state. Come to think of it, no matter who looked at the radiant and elegant man on the high platform, they would not be able to associate him with those despicable and sinister things. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her phoenix eyes, a trace of coldness quietly imprinted in her eyes. This kind of glory wouldn't accompany Lan Jingquang for much longer. Soon, Lan Jingquang would forever sink into darkness and pain. A strong, murderous aura spread in Bailey Hongzhuang's heart. That kind of hatred had been hidden in her heart for so long that it was almost uncontrollable. Actually, among all her enemies, Lan Jingquang was the one she couldn't forgive the most, because no one else was related to them by blood, but Lan Jingquang had always been Lan Yunxiao's beloved big brother. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to lose control of the murderous aura pouring out of her body, Di Beichen's hand slowly wrapped around Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. The warm embrace pulled Bailey Hongzhuang out of her previous negative and violent emotions. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head and saw Di Beichen's warm smile. She relaxed a little. He won't be in the limelight for much longer. Di Beichen whispered into Bailey Hongzhuang's ear. He understood Bailey Hongzhuang. When facing such an enemy, no one would be able to control their emotions. If Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were the ones standing here, they would be even more uncontrollable. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and withdrew from her previous state. Now wasn't the time to expose herself. On the stage, Lan Jingquang furrowed his brows. Just now, he had felt a murderous aura pressing towards him, but before he could pinpoint its exact location, it had already disappeared. It was truly strange. He rarely came to the Yu family, so logically speaking, there shouldn't be any enemies here. Welcome everyone to the recruitment assembly. This old man will be the host for today's preliminaries. I hope everyone can get good results. Chapter 2563. Thunderous applause resounded. Everyone below the stage looked at Yu Taotian with respect and reverence. The Yu clan master was such a powerful existence. Being able to participate in the recruitment assembly hosted by the Yu clan master was also a matter of honor. Yu Taotian looked at the lively scene around him, and the smile in his eyes became even more intense. Although the Yu clan had met with an unforeseen event, the Yu clan's prestige was still the same as before. As long as they could recruit more outstanding seedlings this time, the Yu clan's vitality would be able to recover very quickly. I see that everyone has been waiting for a long time. This old man will not say any unnecessary words. Let the preliminary round of the recruitment assembly begin immediately. Yu Taotian waved his sleeves and announced the start of the preliminary round. Then he sat down on the stage. The Yu clan great elder followed up and said, since the number of doctors and poison masters participating in the preliminary round is much more than before, the preliminary round of the recruitment assembly this time will be conducted through an examination. As everyone can see, we have already prepared the venue and items for the examination. The questions were set by Master Yu Siqing. Everyone only needs to answer them. Anyone who reaches 60 points will be considered to have passed the preliminary round. You will be awarded 1 point, 70 points and above will be awarded 2 points, 80 points and above will be awarded 3 points, 90 points and above will be awarded 4 points, and above 95 points will be awarded 5 points. After that, every additional point will be awarded 1 point. The person who gets full marks will be awarded 10 points. The results of the examination will be announced tomorrow. At that time, everyone can check their results on the ranking board. Hearing the method of the competition, the crowd below the stage started to discuss fervently. Everyone had thought of many kinds of competitions, but they never thought that there would be such a test. They were astonished and curious at the same time. I wonder what will be tested. Could it be the identification of medicinal herbs and diagnosis methods? This question was set by Master Yu Siqing. I'm afraid it won't be easy. However, as long as one can pass the preliminary round with 60 points, I think it shouldn't be too difficult. I think so too. 60 points is just a passing mark. One will definitely pass easily. The doctors and poison masters who were about to participate in the competition were full of confidence. It seemed that their judgment was indeed correct. The Yu clan was currently recruiting talents. Therefore, even the method of the competition had become much simpler. After all, it wasn't easy to pass the preliminary round of the previous recruitment conventions. Some of the doctors and poison masters who wanted to make up the numbers also had smiles on their faces. Even if they couldn't pass the recruitment, as long as they passed the preliminary round, it was a result worth mentioning. Master, this test looks very simple. You'll only get 1 point out of 60. I think many people will probably score more than 90, right? Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi had already returned to the Chaos Ring. However, they were still aware of the situation in the outside world. The scores in front are too low. If you want to get good results, you have to score high, Xiao Bai said. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes flashing with a thoughtful and silent light. This question was set by Yu Siqing. I don't think it's that simple. She and Yu Siqing had also crossed swords in the field of medicine and poison, and Yu Siqing's knowledge in this area was definitely very impressive. Since she came up with such a question, she must have enough confidence to filter out good doctors and poison masters through this method. Chapter 2564. Everyone thought that the Yu clan needed to recruit a large number of people this time, so the conditions would be relaxed. However, according to Bailey Hongzhuang's judgment, things wouldn't be so simple. The Yu clan was able to stand tall in the Shangxian continent for so many years because they had their own family rules. Although they had suffered a great loss last time, they wouldn't be so desperate that they wouldn't be picky. After all, this would affect them even more. This was because the Yu clan's doctors and poison masters wouldn't always stay in the Yu clan. They would be sent to various powers. Di Beichen's thoughts were the same as Bailey Hongzhuang's. I'm afraid there won't be many people who will be able to pass 60 marks. This 60 marks could be a threshold. Some questions would be enough to exclude people who didn't have a solid foundation from passing 60 marks, while doctors and poison masters who had a solid foundation will be able to pass with high marks. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Looks like this recruitment event won't disappoint us. Now, the participating doctors and poison masters can go up the stage and find your seat to take the test. Following the Yu clan great elder's words, the people below the stage rushed up the stage. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen beside her and said, I'm going to take the test too. Good luck. Di Beichen's lips curled into a gentle smile. Even though his appearance had changed, his outstanding temperament was still captivating. Bailey Hongzhuang also walked up the stage. Many people had already found their seats, and Bailey Hongzhuang also found the seat of number 169 after some searching. Among the many participants, Bailey Hongzhuang's seat was considered to be in the front. Although the doctors and poison masters were taking the test together, Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed that the poison masters were in a separate area. Presumably, the questions would be different. The recruitment event this time is really bustling. I'm sure there will be many outstanding doctors and poison masters. Lan Jingquang said to Yu Taotian with a face full of smiles as he looked at the people who were preparing for the exam. Yu Taotian was already in a good mood. Now that he heard Lan Jing's wild agreement, he couldn't help but feel even more pleased. Indeed, the recruitment assembly this time is even more grand, and Siqing's reputation is becoming more and more resounding. Ant's medical and poison skills are truly astonishing. I'm afraid that no one in the entire Shangxian continent can compare to you. Lan Jingquang was not stingy with his flattery, but there was a cold glint in his eyes. The Yu clan's strength really couldn't be underestimated. After these years of development and expansion, the Yu clan had become more and more formidable. Because of this, the Yu clan had been demanding more and more from him in recent years. He was already impatient, but he couldn't show it. Currently, his position in the Lan clan had already stabilized, but he still needed the backing of the Yu clan to intimidate them. With regards to Yu Siqing, this disgusting woman, if he could, he really didn't want to bother with her at all. Everyone in front of her felt that Yu Siqing was a master in their hearts. But if they really saw Yu Siqing, they would know how stupid their thoughts were. Chapter 2565. Lan Jingquang hid his emotions very well, but Bailey Hongzhuang did not miss the sinister look in his eyes. Lan Qingyin's condition had not improved at all. Presumably, Lan Jingquang's people were already frustrated to the point of no return. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up. Lan Jingquang liked to pretend so much in the past, so why not wear this hypocritical mask and continue pretending? Actually, it was also a kind of pain to not be able to express one's true feelings and have to pretend to be another kind of emotion. Bailey Hongzhuang sat down on a chair. There were no extra things on the table, only paper, pen, and a small copper gong. The paper and pen were used for the exam, while the small copper gong was used by the participants to hand in their papers after they had finished writing. The exam time is 2 hours. Once the time is up, you must hand in your papers. Otherwise, you will be considered to have given up. The Yu clan great elder's dignified voice rang out, waking everyone up. After all the contestants had taken their seats, the Yu clan members who were holding the test papers also slowly walked over and distributed the test papers to everyone. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the group of doctors in front of her who were eagerly waiting for the exam. Her black and clear eyes could not help but smile. This situation reminded her of the scene when her old man tested her before. Very quickly, Bailey Hongzhuang received the papers. The questions on the paper were not few, but also not many. 2 hours was enough. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the questions on the paper and found that the points for these questions were very interesting. It seemed that her judgment was not wrong. Yu Siqing did not intend to relax the standards for this preliminary round and was still as strict as before. This was because the points for many of the smaller questions were spread out, totaling up to 40 points. And at the end, there were 2 major questions, each with 30 points. This meant that one of the 2 major questions had to be answered correctly in order to pass. If they could not answer it, then even if they answered all the questions correctly, it would be meaningless. These 2 major questions were very tricky. They raised a specific case and asked the doctor to diagnose and treat it. Although it was just a question, the introduction was very detailed. It was no different from seeing a real patient. A doctor who could cure this kind of illness would not be weak. The competition begins now. Following Yu Taoyin's words, all the doctors and poison masters picked up their pens and wrote down their number before starting to answer the questions. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was unhurriedly looking at the questions on the test paper, her expression leisurely. "Master, this kind of question shouldn't be difficult for you at all, right?" Xiaohei transmitted her voice. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "This question is very good." Yu Siqing really lives up to her reputation. Don't worry, I'm just thinking about how much I should score. These questions were indeed difficult for others, but as a doctor whose medical skills were better than Yu Siqing's, it was naturally not a problem. "Let's get a perfect score and show Di Tiansong," Xiaobai said as if she wanted to see the world in chaos. Di Tiansong was such a despicable person. It would be unforgivable if she did not teach him a lesson. If her master's results were average, wouldn't Di Tiansong and the rest jump up and laugh at her? Chapter 2566. She didn't care about Di Tiansong and Ji Lixue at all. The only thing that worried her was Yu Ruilin. As the 7th young master of the Yu clan, Yurueline naturally had a say in the clan. Once Yurueline decided to take revenge on them, the Yu clan wouldn't care if her results weren't outstanding enough. On the contrary, if her results were outstanding enough, it wouldn't be easy for Yurueline to squeeze her out of the recruitment assembly. Therefore, it was best to get a high score. Ji Lixue had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang ever since she stepped onto the stage. No matter what happened yesterday had made her lose face. She also wanted to know how capable Bailey Hongzhuang was to be so arrogant. However, after Ji Lixue finished 2 questions, she looked up and found that Bailey Hongzhuang was still looking at the test paper. She didn't even start to answer. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't even answer the first question? If that was the case, it would be interesting. However, Ji Lixue didn't continue to pay attention to Bailey Hongzhuang. This time, she was aiming to become Master Yu Siqing's disciple. Therefore, whether it was the preliminary round or the final round, she had to get a good result. Only if she performed well enough would she have a chance to succeed. After making up her mind, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't delay any longer. She picked up her pen and started to write quickly. This test paper was child's play for Bailey Hongzhuang, so the speed at which she answered the questions was extremely amazing. She didn't even need to think and could directly write out the answers. She didn't even need 2 hours. After all the doctors and poison masters started to answer the questions, the entire central square quieted down. Everyone's eyes fell on the contestants who were answering the questions. 2 hours wasn't a long time. I heard that Ji Lixue has the highest expectations this time. She received guidance from Master Yu Siqing before and has been studying medicine all these years. It's very likely that she will become Master Yu Siqing's disciple through this recruitment assembly. Di Tiansong's strength is not bad either. He has always been on par with Ji Lixue. Speaking of which, I'm really curious. Don't underestimate the other contestants. Many of them are famous outside. It's just that we don't know about them. Once the results of the preliminaries are out, we'll know who has the highest chance of winning. Everyone was discussing in low voices, especially the locals of Yutian City. Every time the recruitment event was held, it was a good time to place bets. Therefore, the results of the preliminaries were very important. Ding! Just as everyone was thinking about who had the highest chance of winning, a clear gong sound suddenly came from the high platform. Hearing this voice, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. They looked at the high platform in astonishment. Didn't the exam just start? How did the gongs sound so quickly? Not only were the onlookers stunned, even Yu Taotian and the others were stunned. They knew that someone would answer the questions early, but it seemed to be a little too fast. For a moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the green figure on the high platform. Look, isn't that the woman who taught Ji Lixue and Di Tiansong a lesson yesterday? She actually handed in her paper so early? Could it be that she couldn't do it, so she gave up? Chapter 2567. Suddenly, they heard the sound of a gong. Everyone who was taking the exam raised their heads and looked in the direction of the sound. However, when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang sounding the gong, they were all stunned. Ji Lixue was also stunned. When she started answering the questions, Bailey Hongzhuang was still looking at the papers and had not even started answering. Now, she had not even finished answering the questions in front of her, and Bailey Hongzhuang was actually handing in her paper? What was going on? Was Bailey Hongzhuang planning to hand in a blank paper? At this moment, this was the only possibility that flashed in Ji Lixue's mind. Because in such a short time, Bailey Hongzhuang did not have time to answer the questions. However, when she knew this, Ji Lixue could not help but sigh in relief. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang did not have any achievements in medical skills. Thinking about it carefully, this kind of result was expected. Bailey Hongzhuang was so strong that she was obviously a cultivator. It seemed that she only had a little understanding of medical skills. However, the Yu Clan's recruitment event was not something that could be passed by people with a little understanding of medical skills. It was better to give up now that she knew the difference. In this way, Bailey Hongzhuang should be leaving Yutian City soon. Then, she would not have to face these troubles again. When Di Tiansong saw Bailey Hongzhuang handing her paper like this, a mocking smile appeared in his eyes. He had already guessed that this woman was not capable. She actually dared to teach him a lesson. Since Bailey Hongzhuang was so useless, it should be easy to borrow Yu Ruolin's hands to teach her a lesson. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Tiansong's strength was not simple, the number of experts in the Yu clan was also very shocking. Dealing with 2 cultivators was a piece of cake. The Yu clan great elder walked to Bailey Hongzhuang with a doubtful heart. Looking at the ordinary-looking but confident girl in front of him, he asked, "You want a hand in your paper?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head slightly and passed the test paper in her hands to the Yu clan great elder, saying yes. Hearing this, the Yu clan great elder took Bailey Hongzhuang's test paper. He thought that even if he wanted to give up, he should have waited a little longer. Because he gave up, he became the first person to hand in the test paper. It was really a little strange. However, when the great elder of the Yu clan discovered that the test paper was filled with beautiful handwriting, he couldn't help but widen his eyes. There wasn't a single blank spot on the entire test paper. This proved that this woman had answered all the questions in such a short time. Don't they need time to think? As the great elder of the Yu clan, he had a certain understanding of Yu Siqing's craftiness and methods in setting questions. It was definitely not easy to answer. However, the answers on the test paper were not fake. It was just that he did not know whether they were correct or not. Bailey Hongzhuang left the examination stage under the great elder of the Yu clan's incredulous gaze. She slowly walked to Di Beichen's side. The surrounding discussions also entered Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. In reality, other than the great elder of the Yu clan who knew that she had answered the questions, everyone else thought that she had given up because she was not strong enough. As a result, everyone looked at her strangely. If she was not strong enough, she should have kept a low profile. How could she play to the gallery like this? Wouldn't she be the one losing face in the end? Chapter 2568. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen did not continue to stay in the Central Plaza. Today's preliminary round was over, and the results would only be announced the next day, so there was no need for them to stay. However, when this scene fell into the eyes of the others, it helped to turn their guesses into reality. Bailey Hongzhuang must have been afraid of losing too much face, so she hurriedly left. It was likely that her face would also leave Yutian City today. This kind of thing was not uncommon in the recruitment assembly. Many people thought that they had some understanding of medicine, so they tried to enter the Yu clan to learn medicine. It was a pity that the threshold to enter the Yu clan was much higher than they thought. So many people left when they realized that they could not meet the standards. Of course, after so many years, the only loser who was as arrogant as Bailey Hongzhuang was Bailey Hongzhuang. "Master, your answering speed is too fast. I think no one believes you." Xiaohei's eyes were filled with emotion. Master was in the limelight, and everyone thought that she had failed. This was a very rare scene. This kind of question is difficult for others, but it's easy for me. The answer is in my heart, so naturally it won't take much time. Bailey Hongzhuang's bright and beautiful eyes were filled with confidence. Bailey Hongzhuang was called a godly doctor at such a young age. This kind of skill was not exaggerated, and it was not something that people like Ji Lixue could compare with. Looks like tomorrow's results will shock everyone. White Lion's face was filled with anticipation. Wherever his master appeared, she would always be the most dazzling one. After Yurlin sent people to find out what happened to Ji Lixue and the others yesterday, he already knew the whole story. Di Tiansong did not lie to him. Ji Lixue had indeed suffered at the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang. You still haven't found out the identity of these 2 people? No, these 2 people have not contacted anyone since they came to Yutian City. They also did not mention their names, so we can't find out their identities. These 2 people are so sneaky, there must be something wrong. Yuruelin narrowed his eyes. Since the matter had been investigated, no matter what happened, as long as the other party had wronged Ji Lixue, he would not let them go. Otherwise, wouldn't others say that he, Yurulin could not even protect the woman he liked? At night, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were eating in the house. Suddenly, a series of footsteps came from outside the door. When the three beasts heard the sudden sound, they quickly returned to the chaos ring. Although their identities in Yutian City were not known in Yutian City, if Lan and the others heard it, things would be different. Bang! Uses the U's, U, and Bailey, S's, S, and the others. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were not surprised. They had already guessed that Di Tianzong would urge Yurulin to cause trouble, and they had been waiting here. When Di Tianzong saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were still in the restaurant and had not left, he could not help but look excited. Chapter 2569. You're about to die, yet you're still in the mood to eat. Di Tianzong sneered at Bailey Hongzhuang. But that's good. At least you won't starve to death. Di Beichun looked coldly at Di Tianzong, whose face was still bruised. It seems that you haven't remembered the lesson I taught you yesterday. Today, I'll leave you with an unforgettable memory. Noticing Di Beichun's cold gaze, Di Tianzong couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Yesterday, Di Beichun had taught him a lesson that he couldn't fight back. He knew very well how strong this man was. However, now that he had Yurulin's support, he mustered up his courage. I'm telling you, don't threaten me. Young Master Yu is here. Even if you threaten me, I won't be afraid. After saying this, Di Tianzong quietly took 2 steps back and made way for Yurulin. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Tianzong, who was acting like a lackey, and couldn't help but frown. Jilishua's taste in people is really bad. She actually likes a lackey like you. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang really felt sorry for Jilishua. After receiving Xiao Hei's report today, she had already guessed the ins and outs of the whole thing. Presumably, the reason why he had called Yurulin and the others to cause trouble these days was also hidden from Jilishua. It seemed that Di Tianzong's despicableness wasn't something ordinary people could achieve. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Tianzong and Yurulin's expressions couldn't help but change. Their expressions were somewhat complicated. Di Tianzong couldn't help but feel guilty. He didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang and Yurulin to know that Jilishua liked him. However, now that they said this in front of Yurulin, the situation wasn't very optimistic. Yurulin's expression was slightly cold. He knew that Jilishua had always rejected him, and it had something to do with Di Tianzong. Now that someone had said it so bluntly, he felt a little embarrassed. After all, Yurulin was much better than Di Tianzong in every aspect. Such a huge commotion had naturally attracted a lot of attention. However, with Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the crowd burst into an uproar. Suddenly, Yurulin and Di Tianzong's faces turned even uglier. What nonsense are you talking about? Don't talk nonsense, Di Tianzong hurriedly said. However, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the extremely guilty Di Tianzong in front of her, and an idea came to her mind. As the saying goes, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. She didn't want to be the first bird. Since Di Tianzong liked to play this game with her, she didn't mind playing with him. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang turned her gaze to Yurulin. Young Master Yu, anyone with a clear head would know that Di Tianzong is using you to help him vent his anger. Jilishua's attitude today is already very obvious, but Di Tianzong is still egging you on. It's not because of anything else, but because the person who was taught a lesson yesterday was Di Tianzong and not Jilishua. You're the dignified 7th young master of the Yu clan. Are you going to take revenge for such a despicable person? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. In fact, Di Beichun had only intimidated Jilishua yesterday. He hadn't caused any harm to her body. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.